Chapter 208. But to invite her out, what do we use? GMO scratched his head and said, silver? You are absolutely right. We use silver. Chu Yang nodded. GMO was dumbfounded. He thought it would be some beautiful woman coming to write poems or something like that. Using silver was something he thought was impossible. Who would have thought that it was actually the case? This is a place where the zither master cultivates her zither. But it is also a place where she accumulates wealth. Chu Yang said in a low voice, legend has it that when the zither master first appeared here, the fee for one song was 10,000 taels of silver. 10,000 taels. Luo Kudi's eyes widened. Damn. After listening to her zither music, one could directly become a martial king? 10,000 taels is expensive? Chu Yang looked at him. From then on, the zither master would not bid for anything less than 10,000 taels. But the nobles of Ironcloud Citadel never got tired of this and even competed with each other. The zither master's income became higher and higher. Plus, this house of exceptional beauties has more than one zither master. After the zither master finishes playing, the highest bidder can listen to her song alone. This song is called Lone Wolf. It is a symbol of status. As for the rest, there are too many girls to choose from. Even though they only sell their skills and not their bodies, if they like you, then this can be discussed. Chu Yang laughed. Luo Kudi's eyes widened. If they like you. You also need silver, right? Nonsense. Chu Yang glared at him with annoyance. Truly brilliant. The four of them sucked in a breath of cold air. Yes, they only sell their skills and not their bodies. However, if you are sincere enough, then the beauty will fall in love with you and you can give her away. However, how much silver would you need to spend to make up for this? This was really hard to say. This zither can also be given away? GMO asked. This is not possible. Chu Yang shook his head. This is absolutely impossible. Don't even think about it. Boss, it seems like you are the true master of Moonbreeze. Rui Butong said with admiration. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. He did not expect himself to be a master of Moonbreeze. If he wanted to take over this house of exceptional beauties, how could he not know all the rules? Just as the five of them were whispering to each other, someone had already raised a card. 10,000 taels. Yes, Boss Qian offers 10,000 taels. 15,000 taels. Official Wang has already bid 15,000 taels. So rich. GMO stuck out his tongue. He was a descendant of a super aristocratic family, and his background was more profound than these people's. But if he were to take out 10,000 taels of silver just to listen to a song, he reckoned that he would be skinned alive when he returned home. Duke Lian has already bid 30,000 taels. Are there any higher bids? Someone shouted from the stage. Chu Yang blinked his eyes and said, look at brother's generosity. Suddenly he raised his card and shouted, 100,000 taels. Sitting in front of the stage, a young lady was shaking her head and chuckling softly. She was saying something to the person beside her. He was the one who offered the 30,000 taels of silver. 30,000 taels of silver was already considered very high, and he was already very confident. Who would have thought that 100,000 taels would suddenly pop out of nowhere? He couldn't help but frown. He then turned around to look at Chu Yang. This gentleman offers 100,000 taels. 100,000 taels. Is there a higher one? The graceful woman on the stage was also shocked, but she still managed to react immediately. Jumping from 30,000 to 100,000 taels of silver. This was really the first time. 150,000 taels of silver. Duke Lian stared at Chu Yang with burning anger. 300,000 taels of silver. Chu Yang sneered. The entire hall was silent. 300,000 taels of silver just to listen to a song. This kind of behavior could no longer be described as prodigal. Duke Lian's face darkened. He fiercely glared at Chu Yang. His expression was cold. He turned his head and sat down. He whispered to himself, where did this little guy come from? Who knows this little guy? Several young men next to him shook their heads. One of them said, he looks like a nouveau riche with a few taels of silver. Young Master Lian, you will be able to crush him. Duke Lian sneered and said, no one knows him? They all shook their heads. Duke Lian smiled coldly. He had been chasing after this zither master for half a year. In this half-year, he had thrown in countless taels of silver. This year the snow had sealed Iron Citadel. He knew that the Zither Master loved snow and was in a good mood. He wanted to come a few days ago, but the emperor had passed away and a new emperor had ascended the throne. This was a tense time. How could he dare to show off at this time? Therefore, as soon as the situation relaxed a little, he immediately rushed over excitedly and impatiently. He did not expect that when he came here, an unknown country bumpkin would suddenly appear and steal his thunder. In this ironclad citadel, there is someone who dares to compete with me. Aha, I want to see who this person is. Duke Lian sneered. He turned his head and said, "Keep an eye on this little guy. After you are done, break his legs and bring him to my place." A man in black behind him looked coldly at Chu Yang. The corner of his mouth revealed a cold smile. He whispered, "Rest assured, Duke Lian." How could Chu Yang not know that this Zither Master was the real boss of this house of exceptional beauties? This meeting was related to Chu Yang's future plans. Chu Yang was determined to win this meeting. He did not care how much money he had to pay. After all, it was not his own money. He was only paying for it first. This Duke Lian's family was so rich that Chu Yang did not mind going to his house at night. Naturally, he did not care who he offended because of this. There was only one wealthy family in Ironcloud Citadel with the surname Lian. Minister of Revenue Lian Chenggui's family. This young man must be Lian Chenggui's son. A minister of revenue. His son was able to spend 150,000 taels of silver just to listen to a song. His family's wealth could be imagined. But where did this money come from? The salary of a minister of revenue was only a few hundred taels of silver per year. Minister Chu had not taken action for a long time. In this snowy weather, he wanted to find some entertainment for the officials and citizens of Ironcloud Citadel. He also wanted to remind them, even if there is a change of dynasty, Butian Pavilion is still Butian Pavilion. King of Hell Chu is still King of Hell Chu. Plus, Chu Yang needed to use this big action to tell Diwu Qingro that King of Hell Chu was still an Iron Cloud. This Duke Lian was using this as a stepping stone. Chu Yang was very happy. This duke bid 300,000 taels. Is there anyone else? The middle-aged woman on the stage stopped halfway through her sentence. 300,000 taels to buy a song. Other than this second uncle, there was probably no one else who was this stupid. He smiled and asked, "What is your surname?" Chu Yang smiled, "My surname is Chu." As he said this, he took out a thick stack of banknotes and patted them in his hand. On the top of the stack, there were 3 words, 10,000 taels. This young master came here to show his sincerity to House of Exceptional Beauties. Even if Miss Xiaolu did not play the zither, this money would still belong to House of Exceptional Beauties. Chu Yang smiled faintly. He casually handed the thick stack of banknotes to the young woman in white next to him and said, "No need to count, this is 300,000 taels. Miss Xiaolu, please come out." The young woman in white's hand trembled as she took the banknotes. This was the first time in her life that she had received such a large amount of banknotes. She could not help but be excited. She took it and brought it inside. That Duke Lian looked on coldly. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile as he muttered, "What a rich person. What I like the most are rich people." The young men beside him all felt that it was a pity. Such a good fat sheep, how could he provoke Lian Fanlei? Why couldn't he provoke him? If that was the case, wouldn't that silver be gold for him? To be able to casually take out a few 100,000 taels of banknotes, this fat sheep must be very fat. What a pity. After a while, a puff sound suddenly came from the side of the stage in the hall. White smoke rose from the corners and immediately covered the stage. Then, a thin layer of gauze slowly descended from above and gently covered the stage. With a tinkling sound, a tall and graceful figure appeared in the middle of the stage and sat down leisurely. In the haze, it seemed that the zither master raised her eyes and looked at Chu Yang. The gauze was gently closed and under the lingering smoke, it was impossible to see her face clearly. Only a pair of cold and clear eyes could be seen, like a cold pond in autumn bottomless. Then a faint smell of sandalwood slowly spread out. The hall was silent. Everyone's eyes were quietly looking at the seemingly illusory figure. In front of the zither, an infinitely beautiful figure sat upright. Then a ding sound was heard. The zither strings were slowly plucked and a zither sound came from afar. This zither sound seemed to come from the heavens. It was subtle but holy and noble. It was as if with just a gentle pluck of the zither, all the troubles of the world, all the vicissitudes of the world, all the matters of the world, all became fleeting clouds and smoke. Everything became ethereal. The zither sound was faint and slowly spread out like smoke. It slowly floated out and gradually filled the entire hall. Chu Yang slightly closed his eyes. His mind was involuntarily immersed in this beautiful zither sound. Before coming here, Chu Yang had never thought that a piece of music could have such great magical power. But now he believed it. It was just a prelude. But it was as if it had endless magical power, causing his heart to flutter along with it. Softly, a voice came from the stage. It was faintly discernible and said indifferently, "This song is called Reincarnation." The faint zither sound suddenly disappeared, but it seemed to still be reverberating. In an instant, the zither sound was even more subtle and slowly spread out again. This time it was a completely different feeling from before. Chu Yang seemed to see himself appearing in this world from nothing. A gentle hand hugged him. Then in the next moment, he found himself in a world of ice and snow. The scenes of his previous life flashed through his mind like this, and no matter how big or small they were, no matter how small they were, endless thoughts came and swept through Chu Yang's body and mind in an instant. Chapter 209. The sound of the zither. The sound of the zither was faint. It was obviously a soft sound, but in everyone's heart, it stirred up a monstrous thunder. Everyone followed the sound of the zither and fell into a wonderful state. Chu Yang's heart was as calm as water, but it was as if he was standing at the side of a bystander, quietly watching his own life. His heart and soul were broken. His liver and guts were cut to pieces. When he was young, beyond the heavens sect burned fiercely. Meng Chao ran, dressed in white and wielding a sword, came and went amidst the raging fire. His face was calm in despair, but he pressed himself down and buried himself under the corpses, preserving a bit of life for himself. Walking out of beyond the heavens sect, he had no one to rely on. First, he had no experience, so he easily trusted others and almost lost his life. Fleeing in a sorry state, the journey was filled with dust. Time after time he was schemed against by others, time after time he was chased by others, time after time he escaped from death. This caused his heart to gradually become cold, hard, and emotionless, cultivating in seclusion in the mountains, coming to Iron Cloud. The flames of war filled the sky, moving unhindered in Jianghu, killing people for their goods, starting the road of the poisonous sword revered martial artist. That road was filled with a reign of terror. Leaving behind a trail of corpses and the bleakness of his apathetic departure. He was not heartless. When he killed the first person, he vomited for 3 days. But if I don't kill people, they will kill me. In the vast world he had no relatives. Only he could carve out this road of blood, a road of life. Until that day he found a purple bamboo forest, evoking memories of his childhood. He lingered there, forgetting to go home, but then he met a woman in red. What kind of woman was she? Graceful, a heavenly fragrance, weak and delicate, but strong and proud, with a light sadness covering her body, yet elegant and noble. Every movement of her hand, every movement, they were all top-notch. She was like a fairy quietly standing in front of him. He still remembered that conversation. 1. May I ask your name? My surname is Emo Chingwu. Good name. Is it? Emo Chingwu's beautiful eyes were bleak, muttering, my mother once said, what? A daughter's heart. Emo Chingwu. A daughter's heart. Emo Chingwu. At that time, Chu Yang thoughtfully said, your mother is really a person. Chingwu with the surname Emo in front, the meaning was completely different. A girl's heart should not dance so easily. If you dance lightly, you will surely be despised by others. This was a name, and also a warning from Emo Chingwu's mother to her daughter. It also contained a mother's vision for her daughter's beautiful future. What a coincidence, you came to the purple bamboo forest again. I like purple bamboo. Emo Chingwu smiled gently, concealing the naivety in her eyes. Purple bamboo, my favorite and warmest color when I was young was purple. It's really unforgettable. Really? Me too. I still remember when I was young I grew up in a purple bamboo forest. Later on the people were gone and the purple bamboo was gone too. Their voices were faint, but both of them could hear the nostalgia and melancholy in each other's voices. Both of them were able to sense the intense unwillingness and hatred in each other's hearts. Both of them knew that each other was filled with worries. But at that time Chu Yang didn't know. Now he knew. Mo Qingwu liked the purple bamboo because of her second brother's purple jade flute when she was young. Brother Chu, you're here again. Back then it was like a dream. The purple bamboo is where my heart is. If I don't come to see it, I will always feel that my heart is missing something. Yes, me too, Brother Chu. If you come again next time, can you still meet me so coincidentally? Why? Haha. Nothing. Mo Qingwu smiled. Chu Yang closed his eyes. Separated by two reincarnations, he seemed to have seen Mo Qingwu's smile back then. The purple bamboo swayed like the waves of the sea. Mo Qingwu's red dress fluttered in the wind. In the purple bamboo forest, her beauty was unparalleled. That smile, there was no sorrow, but there was shyness and sweetness. Qingwu, you should know that my heart has fallen for that smile of yours, right? Unfortunately, I didn't know. Qingwu, you're here? What a coincidence. Yes, today is Chongyang. Qingwu, would you like to have a drink with me? Yes, sure. Brother Chu. Chu Yang. Yes, Brother Chu, do you think my dance is good? I haven't seen it yet. Haha, after today's drink, the purple bamboo will bear witness. Little sister will dance for you. At that time, Mo Qingwu's eyes were filled with sweetness, joy, and sorrow. The way she looked at him was filled with tenderness. Her red sleeves fluttered gently. Chu Yang only felt that at that moment, the heaven and earth warehouse was filled with a beautiful red color. And a graceful figure like an immortal stepped on the moon. Blue smoke gently dances in the desert, purple bamboo in the vast sea and horizon. A lifetime of one dance, one person to appreciate. A lifetime of one dance, a lifetime of one dance. Mo Qingwu's beautiful voice seemed to be playing again. The sound of the zither in the hall slowly rose, as if it was twisting and turning, suddenly rising up, following which, a resounding sound of a zither suddenly rang out. Everyone's hearts thumped heavily. And Chu Yang's heart also suddenly shook at this moment. It seemed that fate had reversed at this moment. Chu Yang, don't go. I want to avenge my master, avenge my brothers. I have to go. Chu Yang, you're so cruel. Chu Yang, will you come back? I don't know either. Chu Yang, I finally found you. Are you still the same? Come back with me? Come back with me, okay? Chu Yang, I'm afraid. I've been feeling very uneasy these days. Chu Yang, your heart, is it really as hard as stone? I've long lost my heart. At that time, Chu Yang thought of the ruins of Beyond the Heavens sect, the ground full of corpses, the thick hatred, cutting off emotions, destroying emotions, cultivating the way of the sword and taking revenge. But he didn't notice, or rather, he didn't dare to look at Mo Qingwu's heartbroken eyes. Mo Qingwu left heartbroken. After a long while, Chu Yang suddenly became irritated, as if something bad was happening. Thinking of Mo Qingwu who had just left, Chu Yang became even more restless. Somehow Mo Qingwu seemed to be calling out to him softly, Chu Yang, save me. Chu Yang, you're so cruel. Chu Yang, I want to see you again. Chu Yang, I miss you. Chu Yang's figure shot out like lightning, and his black figure quickly chased after her. At that time he didn't know why he was chasing, and he didn't know what he was chasing. But after chasing for dozens of miles, he found Mo Qingwu besieged by people, and she was seriously injured and dying. At that time, Chu Yang only felt that his heart was about to explode. He screamed and rushed forward, almost losing his mind as he chopped those people into pieces. Mo Qingwu's last moment in his arms, but her face was full of despair and happiness. Chu Yang, you haven't hugged me like this for a long time. I'm so happy. Don't move. Let me see you, look at you. I'm not in pain, really not in pain. Chu Yang, if there's a next life, if I can meet you again, I hope you can take a good look at me. I'm prettier than a sword. Chu Yang, hold me tight. Hold me tight, I want to be held by you forever. Chu Yang, to be able to die in your arms, I'm very satisfied. I have no regrets at the last moment. After all, I saw you. If there's a next life, her eyes were full of longing, but they froze at that moment. Her eyes were still full of love as she looked at Chu Yang's face, but they had already lost their liveliness. But that deep love in her eyes had become eternal. Chu Yang let out a heavy breath, as if he had also spat out his own heart, but he realized that the zither music had already ended. At this moment in the hall, no matter who it was, they were all either deep in thought, sighing, or looking lost. Not a single sound was heard. Gu Duxing sat beside Chu Yang, his eyes moist. He also thought of that person who had sacrificed so much for him, Gu Miaoling. Everyone had their own encounters. This song made Chu Yang experience the sadness of his previous life again. But what others experienced was also the grievance, anger, sorrow, and infatuation of their own lives. This reincarnation song was like a baptism and purification of life. What a beautiful song! Chu Yang sighed softly in his heart. The zither master's reputation is well deserved. However, this reincarnation song was still broken. It was broken. Chu Yang's evaluation. Chu Yang did not know much about music. In his previous life, Mo Qingwu liked to dance. Since ancient times, there was no distinction between dance and music. Chu Yang naturally came into contact with some music knowledge. This reincarnation song, although Chu Yang was not a music master, but he was the only one who understood this song. Because only he had truly tasted the taste of reincarnation. The so-called reincarnation was at least 2 lives. Only then could it barely be called reincarnation. But this song, Chu Yang only recalled his previous life. He did not recall this period of time in this life. But according to his state of mind at that time, it was clearly possible. But the zither music was broken here. So Chu Yang said that it was broken. The hall was completely silent. Only the gigantic furnace in the middle of the hall was flickering, emitting an endless amount of heat. After a long time, there was a burst of thunderous applause. The zither music sounded twice, as if it was thanking him. Mr. Chu, you can ask me 3 questions about music. If I can't answer them, I'll have a long talk with Mr. Chu and we'll have dinner together. The indifferent voice came from the zither master. Chu Yang chuckled and calmed his heart. He said, before the zither master, who dares to talk about music? However, regarding this song, I do have a few questions to ask Miss Xiao Lu. Oh, Miss Xiao Lu's voice clearly showed a bit of interest. This reincarnation song directly entered everyone's heart, regardless of wealth or poverty, good or bad. It can be seen that Miss Xiao Lu's experience in the world of mortals is very successful. But what? Miss Xiao Lu asked. But this song seems to be only half a song. Miss Xiao Lu, why is that? Chu Yang asked indifferently. Chapter 210. When Chu Yang said this, Miss Xiao Lu seemed to be shocked. She did not say anything for a long time. The people below immediately burst into an uproar. Where did this bumpkin come from? He dares to say that such a beautiful zither sound is broken? Incomplete? A young man in white sneered. Do you understand? That's right. No matter if it's in terms of artistic conception or the length of the song, this is a complete song. Lien Fanlei's lips curled up as he looked at this bumpkin who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He said meaningfully, this brother Chu, I'm afraid you have never heard such a beautiful song before? Do you really think that the music of the shepherd boy in the mountains and the funeral in the countryside is the best song of all time? Ha ha ha. The group of people suddenly burst into laughter. This guy is just a frog at the bottom of a well. He has only seen the sky. The group of playboys laughed without restraint. Zheng! The sound of the zither suddenly rang out, and the noise in the hall suddenly stopped. The sound of the zither was intense and decisive. Even those who did not understand music could tell that Miss Xiao Lu was angry. This bumpkin had spoken rudely and had indeed angered the beauty. Everyone began to take pleasure in his misfortune. This song. Under everyone's anticipation, Miss Xiao Lu slowly opened her mouth. Is indeed incomplete. This is because when I was composing this song I had a dream. It was ethereal and illusory, as if someone had told me that this was my heart. After I woke up, I immediately put on my clothes and composed this song. However, the dream was a sudden awakening. When I was about to write the last part of the song, I suddenly felt that I could not continue. Therefore, this song is only half a song. For a long time I have been brooding over this, but I wonder how Duke Chu was able to tell? This song is indeed incomplete. It is only half a song. These few words caused the group of playboys to feel as if they had been struck by lightning. They felt dizzy and were tongue-tied. They did not expect that Miss Xiao Lu would actually admit to this bumpkin's words. They had just been mocking him, But Miss Xiaolu's words were like a slap to their faces. The slaps were very loud and clear. This was especially true for Lian Fanlei. This guy could be considered a knowledgeable person and was somewhat proficient in music. At this moment he felt a burning sensation on his face. He felt so ashamed that he couldn't show his face. How did you figure it out? Haha, I just figured it out. Chu Yang smiled faintly. Miss Xiaolu pondered for a moment before saying, if that's the case, the first question is passed. Brother, please ask the second question. The second problem is still the inadequacy of this song. Chu Yang said in a clear voice. This question caused another round of commotion. Everyone listened to this song. It was perfect. This fellow actually pointed out the problems one after another. This fellow is simply crazy. However, after the previous face slapping, everyone was very tactful and did not raise any questions at this time. They just waited for him to continue. Oh, please enlighten us. Miss Xiaolu's voice was very modest, but this was not an act. She was sincerely asking for advice, and everyone could hear this. Yes, music has always been about being joyful without being obscene, mournful without being hurt. That's the best. In a person's life, no matter how difficult it is, there will always be joys and sorrows, sweet and bitter. Chu Yang said faintly, even the most despicable person, even if he can't live anymore, he will still experience joy and happiness in his life, even if it is only for a moment. Even the most noble person, even the most powerful person, he will still experience hardship in his life. No one can be an exception to this. Behind the curtain, Miss Xiaolu nodded slightly and pondered. Mrs. Song is very moving and captivating. However, it is filled with sorrow. Mournful without being hurt, this point is achieved. However, since it is reincarnation, there will always be joy and sorrow. However, this was the only thing that was lacking in Mrs. Music. However, without this point there is no meaning in reincarnation. Chu Yang said softly, therefore, I think that this song should be changed. What does Miss Xiaolu think? Yes. This time Miss Xiaolu did not wait. Instead, she directly spoke and praised. Duke Chu's understanding of music really makes Xiaolu gasp in amazement. I hope that Duke Chu can leave behind some valuable suggestions and discuss with Xiaolu how to improve it. What do you think? When these words were said, Lian Fanlei's eyes immediately shot out a jealous light. Leave behind some suggestions, discuss methods. How can such a method be discussed in a day or two? If the discussion continues, these two people discuss in bed, then wouldn't I be wearing a green hat? Yes, this guy hasn't even chased her yet, and he is already thinking about the green hat. Yes, this discussion can be discussed later. Right now, I will raise a third question. Chu Yang said faintly. Please speak, Duke Chu. Miss Xiaolu's voice had already become respectful. This young duke had raised two questions that were already worthy of her attention. It was definitely not simple. As the saying goes, the zither music comes from the hands, and the hands come from the heart, and the heart comes from the soul. Miss Xiaolu's zither music is wholeheartedly devoted to it. Her skills are even more outstanding, and the zither on the table is the best zither in history. This combination is already at the peak of perfection. There is no more perfect combination in the world. The only thing missing is the sound of the soul. Miss Xiaolu sighed faintly. Yes, Chu Yang said. After a long silence, a voice came from behind the curtain. It seemed that Miss Xiaolu's mind was wandering, and her fingers were unconsciously plucking the zither strings. Serve tea in the palace. Xiaolu wants to ask Duke Chu for advice alone. Miss Xiaolu thought for a long time before softly instructing. Yes. A pretty maidservant beside her replied. Chu Yang stood up and said faintly, you guys wait for me here. However, I don't think you will be lonely. As he spoke, his eyes looked meaningfully at the group of men who were filled with righteous indignation, and he chuckled softly. This was a disdainful smile. In Iron Cloud Citadel, even Tai Butian could only sulk in front of this king of Hell Chu. Let alone these small fries. Chu Yang did not care at all. If they did not have some value, Chu Yang would not even look at them. As for Lian Fanlei was just a fart. No, in Chu Yang's eyes, he was not even a fart. A fart could still stink for a while, but he was just a dead body that could stink for a while. Don't worry, I will control myself. Gu Duxing smiled coldly and said, I will not delay your plan. He knew that if Chu Yang gave him such a special order, there must be a reason. He also realized that no matter what Chu Yang did, it was always a chain of events, one linked to another, and it would continue to extend. Ever since he met Chu Yang did not do anything casually. Everything had a deep meaning behind it. Gu Duxing naturally would not recklessly ruin Chu Yang's plans. Therefore, even with Luo Kedi and GMO, these two hotheads here, Chu Yang was not worried about leaving Gu Duxing behind. That's good. Chu Yang took a step forward and followed behind the white-clothed maid, walking in neither fast nor slow. Behind them, Luo Kedi was so excited that he almost screamed, Ayaya. I finally finished playing the piano. There are so many beauties here. Let's all do a striptease and sing 18 touches. Chu Yang staggered and almost fell down headfirst. Immediately after, he heard 3 curses. Pig. You pig. You stupid pig. They came from Gu Duxing, GMO, and Ji Butong's mouths. Immediately after, there was a series of bangs and Luo Kedi's screams. Jimo's voice was very flattering. Okay, beautiful sisters, don't be angry. I have already helped you teach him a lesson. Haha. This pervert is simply unbearable. Don't worry, if he makes another sound, I'll hit him. Pretty girl, no matter what, I'm still your flower protector. How about it, everyone give me a kiss? Imagining Jimo's pouting face, Chu Yang quickened his steps and turned a corner. Only when he could no longer hear them did he wipe his sweat. Boss Chu regretted bringing these two guys out. Of course he did not have to worry about their safety, but it was really embarrassing. Grand Duke Chu, please. Arriving in front of an elegant room, the maid bowed. Miss Xiao Lu is waiting inside. Chu Yang nodded and quietly looked around. He saw that this abode was located on the top floor of the 3rd floor. There were a few embroidered buildings on all 4 sides. They were like stars surrounding the moon, perfectly protecting every corner of this abode. This was the most brilliant defensive formation. It is indeed extraordinary. Chu Yang gently knocked on the door. Grand Duke Chu, please come in. A calm voice came from inside. Thank you. Chu Yang pushed the door open and stepped in with one foot. He paused and stepped in with the other foot. His whole person appeared in the room and stopped in front of the door, quietly standing there for a moment. As he stepped in, Chu Yang clearly felt a fierce and unbridled aura locking onto him. This aura was unscrupulous and lawless. It was as if as long as someone offended him, even if it was an emperor with millions of soldiers protecting him, he would still kill him in one strike. And he would not care about any consequences. This kind of aura reminded Chu Yang of Gu Duxing in his previous life. The only time he saw Gu Duxing in his previous life. This lonely guest had such a fierce and unbridled murderous aura. At that time, Gu Duxing was a king-level master. Peak level. King's sword, solitary traveler in the secular world. Not long after that meeting, the news of Gu Duxing successfully breaking through to emperor level spread. Who is this person? How can he have such a strong aura? Chapter 211. After a while, that aura finally dissipated. Chu Yang's expression did not change. He smiled at Miss Xiao Lu, who was sitting behind the zither table, and said, Can I come in? I'm sorry. Grand Duke Chu, this is my guard. He is a bit sensitive. Haha. Please come in and sit. Miss Xiao Lu stood up with an apologetic face. Miss Xiao Lu's figure was beautiful, but her face was only of the highest quality. She was definitely not a peerless beauty, but there was a strange aura of comfort around her that made people's hearts calm down upon seeing her. Her every move, even her words or the slight movement of her eyebrows, was filled with gentleness and gentleness. Everyone, as long as they saw her, would definitely have the same first impression. Gentleness. It was gentleness. Miss Xiao Lu is truly an extraordinary woman. You are worthy of being called the Zither Master. Chu Yang's gaze was calm and full of admiration. However, his expression was serious without any frivolity. There was only praise from the bottom of his heart, but it did not give people the feeling of flattery. This trip was to negotiate. If one was too arrogant, it would not work. If one tried to flatter, it would be even worse. Neither servile nor overbearing, it was just right. This was the way of a king. Minister Chu is indeed Minister Chu. Miss Xiao Lu chuckled meaningfully. Miss is truly an expert. Chu Yang was not surprised. With the strength of the House of Exceptional Beauties, it would be strange if they did not know his true identity. Just like when he faced Di Wuqingro, Chu Yang could only confuse ordinary people, but he knew in his heart that he could not confuse Di Wuqingro. His advantage was distance. The distance was too far. Di Wuqingro would not personally come to deal with him. If Di Wuqingro's position was like that of the House of Exceptional Beauties, Chu Yang believed that even if he was reborn 10,000 times, he would still end up as a corpse. There must be something important for Minister Chu to come here. Miss Xiaolu quietly poured tea and said softly, however, no matter what it is, let's talk about music first. She smiled sweetly and said, the 3 questions raised by the minister have raised my daughter's heart. If the minister can't appease her, I'm afraid that no matter what we discuss, we won't be able to reach a conclusion. Chu Yang laughed out loud and said, I already knew this. But I really didn't expect such a gentle girl to be so strong. Miss Xiaolu pursed her lips and smiled. No matter how strong he is, he can't compare to King of Hell Chu's fierce reputation. Haha. Chu Yang laughed. May I ask the minister how to solve the first problem? Miss Xiaolu was somewhat impatient with this problem. It is the problem of the first half of the song. How can the second half be composed? This question was easy to answer, but also difficult to answer. Personally, I would rather Miss Xiaolu never compose the second half of the song. That would be a good thing. Chu Yang frowned and cautiously said, Oh, why is that? Miss Xiaolu frowned and asked in confusion, what is reincarnation? From life to death and then from death to life, that's a reincarnation. Chu Yang said cautiously, reincarnation is life and death. Miss Yu, I haven't died once. Miss Xiaolu pondered, since I haven't died, I can't compose a complete reincarnation, because I don't know what it feels like, therefore I can't compose it. But if I die once, how can I compose it when I'm dead? So, the song of reincarnation will never appear? Miss Xiaolu's eyes were filled with deep unwillingness. Life and death are not things that only death can understand, Chu Yang said quietly. Just as he finished speaking, that sharp aura suddenly appeared again. In an instant, Chu Yang felt his mouth and nose freeze. He couldn't speak and he couldn't breathe. The person in the dark clearly didn't want him to speak. Miss Xiaolu's eyes flashed as if she understood something. If that's the case, then reincarnation. It's fine if it doesn't exist. Minister Chu, let's continue with the next problem. That aura suddenly disappeared. Chu Yang smiled bitterly in his heart. This Miss Xiaolu was an extremely intelligent person. Even though he didn't finish speaking, she already knew what he meant. Even though that person tried to stop him, he was still one step too late. Miss Xiaolu said that she gave up, but her eyes told Chu Yang that she would never give up. That was a kind of extreme passion for music. The second problem is about the joy, anger, sorrow, and joy of the song. Miss Xiaolu frowned and said, I've thought about it, and I feel that Minister Chu's words are somewhat unreasonable. Oh, music is a simple expression of emotion. Since it's a sad song, mixing in joy and sorrow is like mixing a spoonful of vinegar into a jar of good wine. It loses the integrity of the music. Similarly, a joyful song is the same. Miss Xiaolu frowned. Wrong. Miss Xiaolu's words are very wrong. Chu Yang said seriously. Oh, how is it very wrong? Miss Xiaolu frowned. Music is a simple expression of emotion, so it's inferior. Chu Yang smiled and brought out Emo Qingwu's theory from his previous life. Emo Qingwu had never danced or sung lightly. However, her music was not inferior to anyone in this world. On the contrary, because Emo Qingwu's life was full of twists and turns and was too sad, Emo Qingwu's understanding of life was particularly deep. Therefore, her understanding of music was also very human-like. And this theory was something that Emo Qingwu had pondered for a long time in his previous life before suddenly coming to a realization. Even though Miss Xiaolu was a zither master, she was still young. How could she have experienced Emo Qingwu's hardships? A piece of music should not be used to express emotions, but to use a different method to tell a story. As you play, let the audience feel the joy, anger, sorrow, and joy of the story. Chu Yang said quietly, you don't have to open your mouth to say anything, nor do you have to make any introduction to this story. But you can let anyone who hears this song understand in which part of the song, the meeting, the parting, the sadness, the anger, and the death, and let the people who hear it be able to tell the entire story based on their own understanding. Miss Xiaolu sat upright and still. Her expression was serious as she silently pondered over Chu Yang's words and every word. This kind of attitude, this kind of respect, only appeared in front of her teacher, the real zither master. But at this moment, Miss Xiaolu felt that the person in front of her was Minister Chu, who was younger than her. He was worthy of such treatment. What he said seemed inconceivable at first, but after thinking about it carefully, she felt that it was infinitely profound. But if she wanted to reach the level he talked about, how much effort would she have to put in? But everyone has their own heart, and people's hearts are different. How can I make them say the story that I want to express? Of course it's different. Different people have different experiences and different states of mind. If a story is written by one person, it may be inspirational. But if another person writes it, it may be about growth. If another person writes it, it may be about relaxation and humor. Then if another person writes it, it may be about the rise and fall of a dynasty. Chu Yang said softly. Or if someone writes it, it may be tasteless. Or if someone writes it, it may make people think about it. Or if someone writes it, it may be magnificent. Or if someone writes it, it may be sentimental. But you have to remember that the world's matters are always the same. Chu Yang said casually, if a story is written by 10,000 people, it will still be the same story. And there will not be any changes. I understand a little. Miss Xiaolu pondered and nodded slightly. When music reaches the peak, it can control a person's happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. When you want someone to cry, they will cry. When you want someone to smile, they will involuntarily reveal a knowing smile. All changes are in your heart. And you, although you are called the Zither Master, you should be. Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, there is still an unreachable distance. Yes. Miss Xiaolu respectfully poured tea for Chu Yang. I understand. Big brother, please enlighten me. Yes, from Minister Chu to Big Brother Chu, this was a huge change. It was also a fundamental change in attitude. This meant that this Zither Master was already somewhat convinced. You are welcome. I also hope that I can leave my mark on the path of a talented Zither player to the peak. Chapter 212. At this moment, Miss Xiaolu suddenly felt a sense of familiarity from the bottom of her heart. It was as if the man in front of her was really her own brother. No matter what she did, he would only spoil her and spoil her. This feeling had nothing to do with the feelings between men and women, but it was more of a blood connection than the feelings between men and women. For a moment, her eyes couldn't help but become much warmer. Brother Chu Yang, then what about the third question? When Miss Xiaolu said this, even she didn't realize that there was a hint of coquettishness in her voice. The third question requires good tea, good wine, and he... Chu Yang leaned back and crossed his legs. He shook his legs and said, this question is very difficult to solve. He actually acted as if he was in his own home and spoke in a bureaucratic tone. If Minister Chu was like this from the beginning, Miss Xiaolu would have definitely driven him out. But now that he was joking, Miss Xiaolu bit her lips and glared at him. Then she couldn't help but laugh and said angrily, stupid. I've heard that this place has good wine, good dishes, and good tea. And Chu Yang snorted. He cast a sidelong glance at her, and said in a strange tone, I say, little girl, you want to rely on your glib tongue to take out all the cards of this elder brother's hand? Isn't this too much? Okay. Miss Xiaolu used a helpless tone and said with a smile, Uncle Chu, then I will properly serve you. Don't. Please don't. Chu Yang waved his hand in horror. I still haven't found a wife. Stupid. You wish. Miss Xiaolu angrily stomped her feet. She turned her head and walked away angrily. After taking 2 steps, she turned back and said, wait here, I will brew some tea for you. While I am at it, I will also prepare some food and wine for this young master. Okay? That's more like it. Chu Yang said arrogantly with his nose pointed to the sky. The two of them laughed at the same time, and the atmosphere instantly became harmonious. Miss Xiaolu laughed until her waist bent. She felt that she had not been this happy in a long time. She pouted her lips and pretended to be angry as she muttered, "You are younger than me. Yet you have the cheek to call yourself older brother. You are truly shameless." He walked out. Soon fragrant tea, wine, and dishes were served one after another. There were 8 exquisite small plates, and a small pot of exquisite wine. Chu Yang's appetite was whetted. Without any hesitation he ate and drank like a whirlwind. Before Miss Xiaolu could even move her chopsticks, the table was already a mess. In the end, Minister Chu held the chopsticks in one hand and the wine jug in the other. He simply threw the chopsticks to the side and directly poured the wine into his mouth. With a whoosh sound, the wine in the jug was completely gone. He then lifted the teapot and began to drink wildly. Putting it down, he wiped his mouth and sighed in satisfaction. So satisfying. I didn't even eat breakfast just to wait for this meal. Miss Xiaolu looked at the 8 empty plates in front of her. They were even cleaner than if they had been carefully washed. She was stupefied and flabbergasted. At this time, the chopsticks in her hand had not moved at all. In other words, she did not eat a single mouthful. There was no wine, no dishes, and no this speed, I say. Minister Chu, could it be that His Majesty does not allow you to eat? Miss Xiaolu was flabbergasted as she shouted, "Hey, how can this official's food be better than my little sister's?" Chu Yang sighed and said, "It seems that I will have to come more often in the future. In any case, I am now a distinguished guest." Please don't. If you come more often, our house of exceptional beauties will be closed because of you." Miss Xiaolu raised her hand and made a gesture of surrender. The two laughed at the same time. They both felt as if they had known each other for decades. The mouth of those who eat others is soft, and the hand of those who receive others is short. Hey, since I have already eaten and drunk, it would be unreasonable to just leave like that. Chu Yang pretended to sigh and said, "The third question, As for the third question, Alu, why don't you play the song Happy Reunion for me now?" Chu Yang grinned. "Why can't I play?" Miss Xiaolu happily jumped up. With a face full of smiles, she sat in front of the zither table and said with a charming smile, "Listen carefully." Her voice was like a little girl showing off in front of her big brother. Okay. The sound of the zither cheerfully sounded. It was happy meeting again. The sound of the zither flowed smoothly and revealed incomparable joy. It was as if a pair of close friends had finally met after a long time and had endless things to talk about. They were so happy that they could not contain themselves. In the process of playing, Miss Xiaolu even closed her eyes with a sweet smile on her face. She was completely relaxed. Her fingers moved nimbly and her body swayed along with the music. The song ended. What a good song, happy meeting again. Chu Yang applauded and praised. How was it? Miss Xiaolu proudly puffed out her chest. Ah, very good. This is the best song I have ever heard. Chu Yang smiled meaningfully. This song is complete. Zither sound, zither skill, hand feel, heart music, soul music. They are all filled to the brim. He chuckled and said, "Little girl, now do you know what soul music is?" Miss Xiaolu was startled. She closed her eyes and carefully thought about it. She seemed to have understood something and said, "So that's how it is. You are a great master of music. You can put your heart into the music. Of course, this is already the peak for an ordinary zither master. But for a zither master like you, it is far from enough." Chu Yang slowly said, "Alu, you have to move yourself first." "I understand." Miss Xiaolu happily jumped up and down. She was so excited that her eyes shined and said, "Big brother Chu Yang, thank you. I accept your thanks." Chu Yang laughed. You have to remember that putting your heart into the music is different from putting your soul into it. Putting your soul into it is completely different. Putting everything into it, you are the zither. Yes. Putting everything into it, I am the zither. Miss Xiaolu's eyes shined. After putting everything into it, the next step, Chu Yang slowly said, word by word, transcending it again, is another realm. Transcending it again. Miss Xiaolu was completely stunned. Zither and martial arts in this world, no matter which field it is, there is no limit. Chu Yang slowly said, in this world, there will never be a true peak. There will never be a true regret. Miss Xiaolu carefully pondered over these words and became dazed. After a long time, Miss Xiaolu finally regained her senses. She gently sat down and regained her composure. She softly said, Big brother Chuyang, you came to the House of Exceptional Beauties today for a reason, right? Chuyang nodded and calmly said, yes, there is indeed a matter. I want to ask you for a favor. You helped me a lot. Miss Xiaolu calmly said. No matter what you want me to help you with, just say it. No. Chuyang shook his head. I did not help you. With your perception, you will understand this principle sooner or later. He raised his hand to stop Miss Xiaolu from speaking and solemnly said, Moreover, even if I helped you, I did not come here to exchange conditions with you. This kind of exchange, even if I helped you, would be an insult to music. It would also be an insult to me. Chu Yang's expression revealed a trace of melancholy and confusion. He slowly said, This is the point of view of the person closest to me, and it is not mine. She is not in this world. Therefore, I want her theory to be able to shake the world and surpass everyone. From this point of view, you are the one who helped me. Chuyang bitterly said. Miss Xiaolu was moved. She could feel the helplessness and sadness in Chu Yang's words. This kind of deep emotion could even make her feel the same way. She believed that this was absolutely not a lie. No one could lie like this. Is this friend your? She is the most important person in my life. Chuyang bitterly smiled and bitterly said, I hope that this theory can help you and give you inspiration. I hope that you can ascend to the throne of the world's number one. It is also equivalent to fulfilling my wish. As for her name, Chuyang murmured, it can only be in my heart. Miss Xiaolu looked at him without blinking. After a long time she smiled and said, I will definitely be able to do it. Her voice was firm and resolute, as if she was making a promise. Thank you, Chuyang sincerely said. Haha, now you should say it, right? Miss Xiaolu gently smiled. What do you need my help with? I will think about it and see if I can help. Next year you are going to leave a province, right? Yes. Perhaps I will need your help at that time, but I need you to start preparing now. Chuyang slowly said, at that time we will meet in a province. I need you to prepare a few identities for me to hide and use. No problem. Miss Xiaolu said with certainty. Even though we are not allowed to participate in the struggle for power in the lower three heavens, it is easy to cover for you. Diwu Qingro would not dare to do anything to us. Once Chuyang opened his mouth, she knew what he wanted to do. Thank you, Chuyang said seriously. Naturally, national affairs could not be done casually. The support of House of Exceptional Beauties would determine the success or failure of this trip. No need to thank me, Miss Xiaolu said calmly and then smiled. I am not making a deal. Haha. Chuyang laughed and could not help but touch her nose. You little girl. Miss Xiaolu's smile was filled with warmth. She felt as if she really had a brother who cared for her. It was a feeling of happiness and warmth. I really don't know. What is your full name? Chuyang scratched his head in distress. I am not a good brother. I don't even know my little sister's name. What a failure. Haha. You are always mischievous. Miss Xiaolu laughed cheerfully. My name is Junlulu. Do you remember it? Junlulu, good name. We are Bamboo. Brother Chuyang, do you know Bamboo? Miss Xiaolu playfully tilted her head. Junlulu's words made it clear that Jun Shizhu had already grasped the power of the Monarch Bamboo Union. Chuyang didn't expect it to be so early. He originally thought that since she was as famous as Gu Duxing and the others, she would naturally be around the same age. But now, it seemed that the boss of the Monarch Bamboo Union was older than he had imagined. Thinking about it again, he felt relieved. As long as the people of the three heavens reached the level of revered martial artist or above, they would generally live a long life. The people from 100 years ago would be equally famous as the people from 100 years later. That would not be strange at this moment. A maid ran in a panic and said, young miss, it's bad. There's a fight down there. It's Duke Chu's companions and Duke Lian's companions. Why? It's Master Lian and the others who have been picking on us, the maidservant stammered. Ah. Junlulu's expression became very strange. With King of Hell Chu's fierce reputation, it was already a blessing for him not to provoke these officials and clans in Iron Cloud Citadel. But these people actually took the initiative to provoke King of Hell Chu? This matter is too ridiculous, isn't it? Was this Lian Fanlei's head filled with shit? Lu, it seems that we won't be able to eat dinner. Chu Yang smiled faintly. You still want to eat? Jun Lulu rolled her eyes and said, just now was enough for you to not be hungry for 3 days. Chu Yang laughed and turned around to leave. It turned out that after Chu Yang went in, Lian Fanlei and the others began to mock him out of jealousy. Under Gu Duxing's suppression, GMO Luo Kudi and the others pretended not to hear anything. With their status, Lian Fanlei was naturally ignored. Even if there were 100 Lian Fanlei's clans added together, they still wouldn't be enough to make them angry. In Jimo's words, you want me to personally kill you? Wouldn't that be giving you too much face? Lian Fanlei and the others were proud of themselves for cursing without using vulgarities. But after a while, the other side didn't respond at all. They couldn't help but feel bored. So they gave up on attacking. In this house of exceptional beauties, no one dared to be presumptuous. Then they started to drink their tea and talk loudly. However, this group of people started to talk about King of Hell Chu as they talked. Lian Fanlei shamelessly said, what King of Hell Chu? Aha, in my opinion he is just SOSO. What superior intelligence? Who wouldn't be able to do something like that? During this time, King of Hell Chu seemed to have fallen out of favor. When Lian Fanlei said this, he was full of confidence. One of the youths cautiously said, you can't say it like that. King of Hell Chu used his own intelligence to find so many traitors. This ability is admirable. Intelligence? Bullshit. Lian Fanlei laughed and said, let's talk about that Li guy from the Imperial Censorate. Haha, who doesn't know that he is corrupt and cares about people's lives? Is there even a need to investigate this? As long as he wants to do something, he will do it. Besides, there is also that Wang guy from the Ministry of Revenue. He exchanged hundreds of letters with Great Zhao. Who doesn't know about this? He actually gave all the credit to King of Hell Chu. In my opinion, King of Hell Chu is simply an idiot. And there is also someone who is in contact with Great Zhao's spies. Isn't this something that can be confirmed as long as someone is sent to investigate? How can you say that King of Hell Chu's intelligence is higher than the heavens? In my opinion, King of Hell Chu is simply an idiot. Huh. Lian Fanlei's saliva was flying everywhere as he commented. Suddenly, he couldn't help but laugh loudly. Turning around, he saw GMO holding his stomach and laughing with tears flowing down his face. Ha ha ha. I really didn't expect this. GMO laughed wildly and said, everyone says that there are many idiots in the lower 3 heavens. I didn't believe it. So there really is such an idiot that makes people speechless. I'm really fucked up. Speak more clearly. Gu Duxing also couldn't help but laugh, but he still scolded him with an angry face. I really can't help it. I can't. GMO held his stomach, his face twisted in pain. It's true, second brother. I've seen many idiots, but this is the first time I've seen such an idiot who is so arrogant. Impudent. Lian Fanlei's white face finally turned red. He said angrily, this immortal. Are you talking about me? Fuck. He actually became smart in the blink of an eye. I said it so vaguely, but he actually understood. GMO was dumbfounded. This IQ really makes me speechless. Lian Fanlei's face was so gloomy that it looked like water was about to drip out, sir. Even if you want to insult someone, you should at least give a reason. If you don't have a reason, then don't blame me for being impolite. Reason? Huh? GMO laughed loudly. Sir Lian, you're wantonly criticizing King of Hell Chu here. Do you know how laughable that is? Everything you said was written on the imperial ranking list, and you're using that as an excuse? Left you calling him a shit, right you calling him an idiot, you're really enjoying it. But what are you using to scold him? You're using the evidence that he investigated and announced to the world to scold him? Who's the idiot here? It's really hard to say. The person has already been caught. His head has already been chopped off, and all the evidence has already been announced to the world. You're smart now? Huh. GMO mercilessly mocked. There are loopholes here and there. You're really smart. Why don't you use that brain of yours that's been crushed but not crushed? Think about it. All this evidence, if it were you, would you be able to do it? You would only be able to fart here after everyone else is done. How about Tai Bu Tian? Tai Butian is known as the #1 genius of Iron Cloud Citadel. Before King of Hell Chu arrived, she could not do anything about these spies. You're smarter than Tai Butian? Why are you so awesome? If you're so awesome, why didn't Tai Butian use you? Why is Tai Butian so stupid? Lian Fanlei's face was completely red. He was extremely angry, but in his anger, he regained his composure. How could he dare to say that he was smarter than Tai Butian in front of everyone? That was the current emperor. Who are you? Lian Fanlei asked with a dark face. Who am I? You don't deserve to know. GMO let out a long laugh. Especially a bastard like you who picked up the wisdom of others and then attacked the original author. You don't deserve to know. Hearing this, if Lian Fanlei could still control his temper, then he would be a saint. He no longer cared about the rules of the House of Exceptional Beauties and screamed, "Beat him. If he dies, I'll take responsibility." Beat him? GMO crossed his arms and sneered. You dare to beat people? Are you not afraid of the laws of Iron Cloud Nation? Laws. In this place the elders are the laws. Lian Fanlei shouted angrily and urged, Go. Beat him. Beat him. The guards behind him stepped forward. The other guards were also unwilling to be left behind. One by one, they rolled up their sleeves and were about to rush forward. Stop. A cold voice said. Whoever fights in the House of Exceptional Beauties will die. These words were so loud that even the huge charcoal stove in the hall flickered twice. Dust fell from the roof of the pavilion. When we get out, I will teach you a lesson. Lian Fanlei said ferociously, Little one, I will let you know what regret is. If you offend me, what will happen to you? Ayaya. I'm so scared. GMO crossed his arms and looked like a pitiful little girl who met a pervert. He even looked at them one by one. I'm so scared, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. Lian Fanlei was fuming. At this time, Chu Yang came down from upstairs and said casually, You're already so old, why are you wasting time with trash? Let's go. Feng Xian went out first and did not even look at Lian Fanlei. Chapter 214. Watching Chu Yang leave, Jun Lulu sighed softly from upstairs and said, This Lian Fanlei is really unlucky. To provoke King of Hell Chu at such a critical time, isn't he just looking for death? Originally, King of Hell Chu had already killed most of his people. During this period of time, when the new emperor ascended the throne, he was quiet for a while to give face to the new emperor. Now that the critical moment has passed, he was looking for someone to show off his power. He was not sure who he was looking for, but he directly sent his head to King of Hell Chu's butcher knife. Yes, if King of Hell Chu wants to go to Great Zhao, then in order to confuse Diwu Qingro, he must first create a huge disturbance in Iron Cloud Citadel to make Diwu Qingro think that he is still in Iron Cloud. This way, his actions in Great Zhao will be safer. Just the Lian clan alone cannot reach this level. There must be others. Another elegant voice said in a low voice, Ah yes. Jun Lulu turned around and returned to her room. She said, Duke Yu, in your opinion, this King of Hell Chu, what do you think? He can be considered a top character. Duke Yu, who had never shown himself, said in a low voice, however, this person is very dangerous. Very dangerous? Jun Lulu frowned. On his body there is a dangerous aura. Duke Yu said casually, however, his current strength is too low to threaten us. Is it about going to Great Zhao? Jun Lulu asked. Let's prepare 3 people for him. Duke Yu said casually, 3 young musicians, 2 men and 1 woman. One of them is surnamed Chu. The other 2 are not to be named. If needed, then use them. If not, then forget it. This is not a big deal. Good. However, our House of Exceptional Beauties cannot be used by him for nothing. When he comes back, we must make him pay a price. Duke Yu whispered, I heard that he has a few divine weapons. Alu, why don't you take one and play with it? Divine weapon. Jun Lulu revealed a startled expression. She suddenly smiled and said, Brother Yu, do you think she was just helping him out, and that she would take away his precious divine weapon? Duke Yu's words were very strange. Cough cough. I'm going to cultivate. Duke Yu didn't say anything else. Jun Lulu's face revealed a trace of hidden bitterness as she muttered, It's like this every time. When we reach a certain point he runs away. As the Minister of Revenue, Lord Lian Chonggui had been extremely busy during this period of time. When he finally finished dealing with official matters, he straightened his back and hurriedly walked out to sit in a sedan chair and rush home. Along the way, his brows were furrowed and his mind was preoccupied. The deficit of the Ministry of Revenue was a huge hole. Although he had done everything flawlessly over the years, the new emperor had just ascended the throne. He had to be alert. If he was caught, his whole family would be finished. Fortunately, until now, the emperor still had a lot of trust in him. In the following period of time, he had to do something on the accounts and make up for some omissions. He also had to give some benefits to his subordinates to ensure that nothing went wrong. It would be best if he could make some political achievements. When he got home, before he could even sit down, his son, Lian Fanlei, rushed in and almost choked him to death. "Father, I want to use a few shadow guards." "What do you want to do?" Lian Chonggui staggered. How could a shadow guard be moved so casually? They were protecting the country's treasury. "There's a brat who doesn't have eyes. I have to cripple him." Lian Fanlei gritted his teeth. "Someone provoked you?" Lian Chonggui's lungs were about to explode from anger, but he still held it in and asked in detail. He had to know who it was that offended who, right? It was at the House of Exceptional Beauties. Someone with the surname Chu. Lian Fanlei was so angry that he jumped up and down and quickly told him what happened. Lian Chonggui was so angry that he almost fainted. He knew that his son was an idiot, but he didn't think that he was an idiot to this extent. Not only did he fight with someone in a brothel, he even had to use shadow guards for this. The old man was in danger every day. He was so scared that he almost couldn't breathe. He was afraid that there would be a loophole and he would become the new emperor's target. He didn't even dare to say a single word. His son actually provoked this and that outside, and even forced him to send out a secret guard to help him fight for a woman's favor. "Ah!" With a loud slap, Lian Chonggui roared in anger, "Bastard! Who told you to go to the House of Exceptional Beauties? Can't you be a bit more obedient?" "Ah! Father!" Lian Fanlei covered his burning face and froze. Even in his dreams, he didn't think that his father would hit him, and hit him so hard. This kind of thing had happened before, but his father had never reacted like this. The sound of horses galloping could be heard, and a loud shout was heard. "Butian Pavilion is on business. Everyone please leave." Listening to the sound of horses, it seemed like they were coming towards him. Lian Chonggui's face paled. He didn't have time to teach his son and rushed out of the door. He was immediately stunned. On the main street in front of the gate, dozens of tall horses with pitch-black bodies were carrying dozens of expressionless black-clothed people. The one at the front was Hall Master Chang'ong of Butian Pavilion. Lian Chonggui's mind was blank. Arriving in front of the Lian residence, Chang'ong waved his hand, and the assassins of Butian Pavilion spread out and surrounded the entire Lian residence. Chang'ong floated down from his horse and walked over. He nodded. "Senior Lian, what a coincidence. We meet again." Lian Chonggui wanted to cry. "What coincidence? The person I don't want to see the most in the entire capital is you. Seeing you, Chang'ong, is definitely not a good thing." "Senior Chang." Lian Chonggui's voice was trembling. He bowed and asked, "This is, under the orders of the minister, I am bringing Senior Lian's family to investigate." Chang'ong said politely, "It is only an investigation. I hope Senior Lian can cooperate." Investigation? Lian Chonggui felt the world was spinning. When Chang'ong caught the dozens of officials, he also said the same thing. "What crime did I commit?" Lian Chonggui tried one last time. "I want to see the emperor. I want to see the emperor. I am an important official of the court. You Butian Pavilion have no right to catch me." The minister said that his original target was not Senior Lian. However, there was one thing that piqued the minister's curiosity. Chang'ong sighed. "What thing? Curious?" Lian Chonggui was puzzled. What could I do that piqued King of Helchu's curiosity? Even though I am the Minister of Revenue, I don't think I have that much face. It is nothing. Chang'ong said calmly. "I heard that your father spent 150,000 taels of silver at the House of Exceptional Beauties to buy a song from a beauty. Senior Lian, this is what piqued the minister's curiosity. Not only the minister but I am also curious. Senior Lien is really rich. TSK 150,000 taels of silver just to listen to a song. As far as I know, Senior Lien's monthly salary is 80 taels of silver. A year's salary is 1,000 taels of silver, right? Chang'ong said, Senior Lien, your father spent 200 years just to listen to a song. This is slander. Lien Chengui's whole body was cold. His eyes were blurred. He could only deny it. How could there be such a thing? Senior Lien, did your father not tell you? Chang'ong blinked mysteriously. The person who was jealous of your father at the House of Exceptional Beauties. He lowered his voice and said mysteriously. His surname is Chu. His surname is Chu. Lien Chenggui murmured. Suddenly, he remembered that his son said that he wanted to send the secret guards to deal with that person. A person with the surname Chu. Holding on to a sliver of hope, Lien Chenggui said shakily. Could it be the minister? Chang'ong had a "you are very smart" look on his face and nodded his head. Oh ho ho, oh ho ho. Lien Chenggui didn't know whether he was crying or laughing. Strange sounds came from his mouth. The next moment, Senior Lien Chengui's eyes closed and his body fell to the ground. He fainted without a doubt. Before he fainted, his only thought was, this is really funny. I can't even hide from this person. My son actually went to fight with him out of jealousy. In front of King of Hell Chu. He spent 150,000 taels of silver just to listen to a song? This is too funny. Lien Fanlei, who followed behind him, stood there in a daze. He couldn't believe what he had just thought. So that person was King of Hell Chu. No wonder the people he brought were so dissatisfied with him for slandering King of Hell Chu. The next moment, Senior Lien started to cry. He cried and shouted at the same time. I really don't know who he is. The minister orders. Take away all the Lien family members. Seal all the accounts of the Ministry of Revenue. Check the accounts carefully. Chang'ang's order shook the entire city. Seal all the accounts of the Ministry of Revenue and carefully check the accounts? How many people would be out of luck? The space of Ironcloud Citadel shook. Last time it was to investigate spies. But this time it was to investigate corruption and bribery. A huge amount of wealth came from an unknown source. Believe me, no matter what dynasty, the number of corrupt officials is always greater than the number of spies. As for the huge amount of wealth, think about it yourself. These officials, which one of them didn't have shit on them? The prison of the Ministry of Justice was once again commandeered by Butian Pavilion. A while ago, when the new emperor ascended the throne, everyone was pardoned. All the criminals in the city were released. This was the time when the prison needed to be filled. The next morning, when Tai Butian was in court, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. How come there were so few of the military officials under him? Originally, there were several hundred people in court. Now, it seemed that there were less than half. What happened? Did everyone go on vacation? His Majesty Tai Butian was not worried. Your Majesty, save us. Even if someone gave the order, it would not be so orderly. More than half of the military officials knelt down. They knelt for a long time, tears streaming down their faces. Apart from a few big shots, there were no more than 30 people left standing in the imperial court. However, the remaining people, regardless of whether they were high or low officials, all stood up straight and their faces were filled with pride. Only when the yellow sand is washed away could one see the gold. Although the amount of gold was a bit small. What happened? Where are the others? Tai Butian was also surprised. All the officials looked at each other. No one dared to speak. After a long time, one of the officials kneeling at the front trembled and said, everyone else was taken away by King of Hell Chu. Even us. Your Majesty. This official suddenly burst into tears. There are still people from Butian Pavilion outside the Golden Palace waiting to catch us. Chapter 215. What exactly happened? Tai Butian's face was as heavy as water. All the kneeling officials did not dare to speak. They just kept kowtowing. We are guilty. We deserve to die 10,000 deaths. Who can tell me what happened? What happened? Tai Butian slowly sat up from the dragon throne, her gaze awe-inspiring. Actually, it's not a big deal. Ironcloud's Prime Minister Huangfu Mingjing stroked his beard. He was one of the few people standing. He said calmly, "Your Majesty, it was Minister Chu who sealed the Ministry of Revenue and arrested Lien Changgue. Moreover, Butian Pavilion is investigating the Ministry of Revenue's accounts. Minister Chu has already given the order of the King of Hell to investigate this matter thoroughly. Whoever is found, he will be arrested. Whoever is caught, he will be killed." The Prime Minister's last few words were cold. It was obvious that he was taking pleasure in other people's misfortune. This made all the kneeling people's faces turn even paler. But what does the Ministry of Revenue's accounts have to do with them? Tai Butian looked at the dozens of people kneeling in front of him in shock. There were also more than 100 people who disappeared today. Suddenly, he felt dizzy and his body swayed. Among them, there are people from the Ministry of Revenue, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Rights, Ministry of Appointments, and Ministry of War. These years, it seems that everyone is not very well off, so, cough cough. Huangfu Mingjing coughed and said slowly, "So many officials have set their sights on the National Treasury. And the National Treasury is under the Ministry of Revenue's jurisdiction. Therefore, everyone's lives suddenly became better. Moreover, after the matter, as long as Minister Lien uses his methods, cough cough, everything will be fine." Huangfu Mingjing seemed helpless, but his words were vicious and merciless. "And now, I don't know what happened, but Minister Chu found out about these things." Huangfu Mingjing said cautiously, well, I heard that Minister Chu was furious. Last night, Butian Pavilion raided 35 households. Tai Butian's face was pale. He said, "Could it be that these people were involved in the National Treasury?" Tai Butian's finger trembled as he pointed at the officials kneeling in front of him. The officials did not dare to speak. They all trembled and knelt with their foreheads pressed against the ground. Seeing this, Tai Butian's body swayed again. Suddenly, she closed her eyes with a splitting headache. He didn't blame Chu Yang at all. But he only felt heartache. Incomparable heartache. The imperial court. What kind of place was that? The people of the world yearned for it day and night. Some local officials would never be able to stand here in their entire lives, not even for a moment. It could be said that above the Golden Palace were the true pillars of Iron Cloud Nation. This was the foundation of the entire Iron Cloud Nation. If this place was rotten, then Iron Cloud Nation was rotten from the roots. These years were the most difficult times for Iron Cloud. They were supposed to be in the same boat through thick and thin, but they didn't expect that each of them would be more aggressive than the other in trying to poach the country's people. He had painstakingly cultivated them, only to cultivate a bunch of vermin. "Hello. Very good. Very good." Tai Butian gritted her teeth and nodded her head. Her face was ashen. Suddenly, she let out a sorrowful and indignant laugh. "Ha ha ha. Not bad indeed. You are indeed the pillar of my Iron Cloud. What a great talent." Regarding the National Treasury, he had always known that it was a serious matter. He had always wanted to find a reason to investigate it after ascending the throne. No matter how serious it was just a few officials. At most it would involve a dozen or 20 people. That was already shocking enough. No matter what, he would never have thought that there would be so many people involved. Without these people, there would only be 30 or 40 people left in the imperial court. It was as good as empty. But if he didn't go, should he keep them? Keep these vermin? "All of you kneel here." Tai Butian angrily kicked the golden table in front of the dragon throne. She roared. "Immediately summon Minister Chu to the palace." After less than an hour, the sound of horse hooves could be heard. They had actually arrived in front of the Golden Palace. If it was any other time, there would have been people jumping out to accuse and impeach the emperor. But today not a single person spoke. "Reporting to Your Majesty, Minister Chu requests an audience." Bam! In an eerie silence, the sound of slow and steady footsteps could be heard. It was slow and rhythmic. The next moment, everyone felt their vision darken. A man in black appeared at the entrance of the Golden Palace. The black robe covered him from head to toe. The only part of his face that was exposed was a hideous golden mask. The moment this person appeared at the entrance of the Golden Palace, the temperature of the entire Golden Palace seemed to drop by a few degrees. Especially the officials who had ulterior motives. They felt fear from the bottom of their hearts. It was as if this person's arrival brought with him the aura of hell. Find a seat for Minister Chu. Before Chu Yong could speak, Tai Butian spoke first. Tai Butian did not want the officials to know that the current Butian pavilion was actually not under her control. And Chu Yong was also not an official of Iron Cloud. This was too shameful for an emperor. Thank you, Your Majesty. Chu Yong naturally understood Tai Butian's hint. Before he sat down, he thanked Tai Butian and sat down steadily. May I know the reason for Your Majesty's summons today? Minister Chu, you must be very busy these 2 days. Tai Butian smiled and said, regarding the matter of the national treasury, I wonder what Minister Chu plans to do? She went straight to the point. According to Your Majesty's previous promise, Butian Pavilion has the right to act first and report later. Chu Yong said casually, therefore, after such a big incident last night, we have already verified that several vermin were killed in Shi City this morning. A total of more than 300 people. When these words were spoken, the officials kneeling on the ground trembled even more. What about the rest? Tai Butian let out a long breath. This requires Your Majesty's judgment. Chu Yong said casually, however, according to our Butian Pavilion's opinion, it is best to kill them all. After all, our brothers have paid a lot for this investigation. It is very tiring. Kill them all. Some people had already fainted. There were also people who were quietly crying. Old Prime Minister Huangfu Mingjing could not help but roll his eyes. Kill them all? That was tens of thousands of people. The old man felt more and more that something was wrong. Before Chu Yong came, Tai Butian was furious. But after Chu Yong came, the atmosphere seemed to have become very strange. Rather than saying that the two of them were asking and answering questions, it was better to say that they were acting out a play. One was the good cop, the other was the bad cop. Killing them all is not a good idea, right? Tai Butian frowned. You must know that if the whole family is killed, there are tens of thousands of people. Your Majesty is overthinking. Chu Yong said calmly. Iron Cloud has been fighting for years. There are already 8 million young people who have died in the flames of war. Iron Cloud can still afford to lose tens of thousands of people. Minister, can you give them a way out? Tai Butian said with a smile. Since Your Majesty is asking for mercy, we can naturally deal with them according to the severity of the case. Chu Yong said. As for the results of the investigation, I will send them to Your Majesty. Your Majesty can dictate. Tai Butian snorted and said fine. Chu Yang's words were obviously a jab. How could Tai Butian not understand? Dictate? What is dictate? However, Chu Yang's words were also a reminder. As for what reminder, that was unknown. At this point, the play between the two of them was over. Minister Chu, can you talk with me? Tai Butian said with a smile. I don't want to disturb Your Majesty's peace. Chu Yong said lightly. Men, prepare the golden tower for us. Tai Butian smiled. This is a big gift from me to Your Majesty. Chu Yong said softly, today's foundation is shaken and there are killings everywhere. But in the future, there will be long-term peace and stability. Your Majesty has ascended the throne. In a moment of carelessness, I forgot to give you a gift. Let's use this as compensation. Minister Chu's words made Tai Butian's eyes almost pop out of their sockets. She was both angry and amused. In the end, she just sighed. The two of them talked for a long time in the palace. No one knew when Minister Chu left, but everyone's hearts were finally at ease. At least they wouldn't die immediately. They had a little time to breathe. After a few days, Tai Butian issued an imperial edict. Those who embezzled less than 50,000 taels of silver shall hand over their gains and redeem themselves by meritorious service. Those who embezzled more than 100,000 taels of silver shall hand over their gains and be demoted to a commoner. Those who embezzled more than 100,000 taels of silver shall be beheaded in public and their families exiled. As for those who embezzled more than 1,000,000 taels of silver, their entire families shall be executed. This decision seemed lax, but Iron Cloud Citadel was also dyed red with blood. Thousands of heads were beheaded just like that. The law could not punish the masses. This principle still applied at this time. If everyone was beheaded, Iron Cloud's royal court would probably collapse immediately. Tai Butian could only deal with it slowly. But one thing was for sure. If one day these people did not perform well, then this old debt would immediately be reopened. Chu Yang stirred up this matter to establish Butian Pavilion's prestige and became the villain himself. Moreover, it allowed Tai Butian to win the hearts of the majority. This matter would directly skip the short period of adjustment for Tai Butian's ascension to the throne. It would directly force Tai Butian's royal court to enter a period of maturity. Although this royal court would be half empty, after this matter, at least for a long time, the appearance of Ironcloud Citadel's officials would be renewed. This was Chu Yang's big gift to Tai Butian, to congratulate him on his ascension. As for the cause of this matter, Minister Chu did not say anything. If he said that it was because he was jealous of someone at the House of Exceptional Beauties, the new emperor would probably faint from anger. After this matter, King of Helchu's notoriety shook the heavens. King of Helchu's brutality made everyone who heard it gasp in amazement. In the hearts of the officials, King of Helchu's already terrible reputation increased by 2 pounds and reached a new level. But in the hearts of the people, King of Helchu's reputation soared to the heavens. Everyone in Ironcloud Citadel was in danger. No matter what they did, even though there were fewer officials, their efficiency increased a lot. Chang Yuan he finally brought his people back to the capital of Great Zhao after a long and tiring journey of nearly a month. Just one more day, and the Meng Hun solution will be over. Chapter 216. After crossing the border of Ironcloud Nation, they spent 20 days in a world of ice and snow. With great difficulty, they finally reached the border of Great Zhao. After such a long time, they hurriedly found the local contact of Golden Horse Riders Department and reported the news to Diwu Qingro as soon as possible. It could be said that each word was filled with blood and tears. Golden Horse Riders Department was shaken. In the Prime Minister's manner, Diwu Qingro and Han Buchu looked at Chang Yuan he who had obviously lost a lot of weight. A few days ago the news had already arrived. Jing Meng Hun had also personally gone to bring Yin Wu Fa back. However, after a few days of buffer time, Diwu Qingro still felt dizzy after hearing Chang Yuan he's report. This time the meeting was much larger. There were 2 more people, Jing Meng Hun and Yin Wu Tian, the other 2 king-level leaders of Golden Horse Riders Department. The 5 of them sat in a semicircle facing Diwu Qingro. Everyone's face was gloomy. The matter is just like this. Chang Yuan he finally finished speaking with difficulty. Right now, Chang Yuan he's cheeks were deeply sunken and his cheekbones were protruding. His 2 eyes seemed to have become 2 empty holes. The torment of this journey was truly indescribable. Han Buchu and Gao Sheng looked at each other and felt speechless. This time, Chang Yuan he went to take charge of the overall situation. However, after he went, he was basically useless. If he could be said to be useful, then at the most dangerous moment, he was able to save the last of his strength and escape unscathed. However, the remaining strength was so pitiful. However, this matter could not be blamed on Chang Yuan he. Everything was Kong Shang Xian's own decision. One wrong step after another, it led to a situation that could not be cleaned up. But now Kong Shang Xian was dead. Thus, even if they found someone to take responsibility, there would be no one left. How could Diwu Qingro not be depressed? 2 king-level leaders, 3 revered-level command horse riders, and more than 30 revered-level experts were buried in Iron Cloud. Diwu Qingro's face was calm as he slowly said, and all of this was because they died in the hands of an enemy. They died in the hands of an enemy that could have been avoided. Diwu Qingro laughed softly. The affairs of the world are strange and bizarre to this extent. I can't help but say that this is an eternal story. His face was very calm, but his tone of voice was very oppressive. It made people who heard it feel their hair stand on end. Prime Minister, please calm down. Han Buchu probed. This matter cannot be blamed on the king-level masters, nor can it be blamed on Brother Chang. King of Helchu is too cunning. King of Helchu is too cunning. Diwu Qingro closed his eyes and said, 3,000 years ago, there was a wise man who was the emperor of Tianyu. Especially the generals, they already had wealth. All they wanted was to preserve their lives. Under Dongfang Qingtian's unparalleled command, his side slowly stabilized the situation. But at that time he was surrounded by enemies from all sides. He could not control all of them. He could only control one side, so. In the end, Tian Yu's army was defeated. Dongfang Qing Tian was defeated by his own country's defeated army. Thus Tian Yu was destroyed. Dongfang Qing Tian looked up to the sky and sighed 3 times. In the chaos, he pulled out his sword and committed suicide. What was he sighing about? Han Buchu hurriedly asked. At that time Dongfang Qing Tian said, prospering is like picking up dirt with a needle. Failing is like pushing sand with water. Even though I could make conquering the world easy, I could not stop the decline brought by power and prosperity. Strategizing an attempt to determine victory from 1,000 miles away. This saying is not false. But, since the ancient times, who could strategize in a palace to determine victory from 1,000 miles away? My defeat was due to power and influence. I lost to prosperity. Diwu Qingro slowly finished speaking. Everyone was quiet and did not say a word. They were deep in thought. Strategizing an attempt to determine victory from 1,000 miles away. As a qualified general, this is what I should do. In the military camp, the general is in the tent. If I lost, then I deserve to die. Diwu Qingro said softly, this is not a legend. My talent is far inferior to Dongfang Qing Tian's. Diwu Qingro said quietly, but I have always avoided Dongfang Qing Tian's mistakes. Thus, I have always stayed in the prime minister's manner and allowed you to develop your own abilities. Even if you lost, as long as it was not a total loss, then with me Diwu Qingro here you still have a chance to make a comeback. Because even if you lost, it was your own loss, not my command. You lost, but with my command you turned the situation around. Even though I did not say anything, I made you realize your own shortcomings. Step by step you grew up. Diwu Qingro smiled bitterly. Now most of you can hold your own. You are my biggest trump card to conquer the world. Do you understand? Han Buchu was moved and said, Prime Minister's thoughts make us feel ashamed. Kong Shang Xian lost, but he threw himself there. Diwu Qingro shook his head. This is the biggest failure. It is also the first time since the establishment of the Diwu group that we have suffered a crushing defeat. The reason is not that King of Helchu is too cunning. Diwu Qingro said seriously. It is that we have been too comfortable these past few years, and there has been no challenge. Jing Menghun sighed deeply and did not speak. Yin Wutian retorted. But King of Helchu's treachery is real. Not true. King-level leader Yin, let me ask you. If Kong Shang Xian had carried out such a mission when Golden Horse Riders Department was just established, would he have acted on his own? Would he have dared? Diwu Qingro asked slowly. He would not have dared. Yin Wutian was flabbergasted for a while before finally lowering his head. Yes, he would not have dared. Diwu Qingro said, but now he dares. Not only does he dare, but he also dares to take all his subordinates with him. He already thinks that Golden Horse Riders Department is very powerful. He is very confident in everything he does. So he dared. So he died. Diwu Qingro said seriously. Kong Shang Xian's weight was far less than Dongfang Qing Tian's, but he was still defeated by power. Diwu Qingro said seriously. So Kong Shang Xian's death was not unjust. Facing an opponent like King of Helchu, the moment he made such a rash decision, he was already a dead man. This defeat is very deserved. Your Golden Horse Riders Department should have suffered this defeat long ago. Diwu Qingro said. Facing an enemy like King of Helchu, if your Golden Horse Riders Department continues to be arrogant like Kong Shang Xian and Yin Wu Fa, I will not be surprised if one day Golden Horse Riders Department collapses at the hands of King of Helchu. Jing Menghun and Yin Wutian were sweating profusely. The two of them had wanted to immediately dispatch experts to take revenge. But Diwu Qingro hadn't stopped them. He had only spoken such words. And their thoughts of revenge had already disappeared without a trace. So they had felt a deep sense of crisis. Diwu Qingro's words were very serious. In recent years, this was the first time Diwu Qingro had spoken so seriously, especially to the king-level leaders like them. For a moment, even a king-level leader like Jing Menghun felt a chill down his spine. Your defeat is just like Dongfang Qing Tian's. And I am Dongfang Qing Tian. Although I can arrange things for you, if you do not do it well, you will still lose. Chapter 217. Beads of sweat the size of soybeans dripped down from Jing Menghen's forehead. Diwu Qingro did not comment on the gains and losses of this operation. He also did not comment on the things to pay attention to after this operation. However, his words clearly showed the fury in Diwu Qingro's heart. Why was Golden Horse Riders Department established? It was for Diwu Qingro to dominate the world. If Golden Horse Riders Department became a burden to Diwu Qingro, then Diwu Qingro would not mind disbanding Golden Horse Riders Department. Just like how he casually established Golden Horse Riders Department, Jing Menghen would not have any doubts. Golden Horse Riders Department was established for Diwu Qingro's benefit. But you cannot bring me benefits. Then why do you still exist? What do you want? Just for money? King-level masters are important, but can you compare to thousands of soldiers and horses? Can you help me conquer the world? No. Since you cannot and you cannot bring me any benefits, then what is the point of keeping you? Diwu Qingro was making an analysis. But he was making use of this analysis to put forward his demands for the Golden Horse Riders Department for the first time. And for the first time, Golden Horse Riders Department could cease to exist. Such a strict rule. Dong Fangqing Tian's mistake was that he believed in his own strength and wisdom. But I, Diwu Qingro, do not. Diwu Qingro looked at Jing Menghen with warm eyes and said slowly, therefore, I can allow the same mistake to happen once, but I will not allow it to happen a second time. Jing Menghen felt his entire back soaked with cold sweat. He said, rest assured, Prime Minister, there will not be a second time. I believe. Diwu Qingro nodded deeply and said, failure is not scary. Death is not scary. What is scary is that failure has clouded one's mind, and hatred has blinded one's mind. Golden Horse Riders Department's revenge must be avenged. But before it is time, no one is allowed to act rashly. Jing Menghen gritted his teeth and said, yes. Diwu Qingro nodded and asked, King-level Master in Wu Fa's injury, how is it? He had always suppressed this topic and never allowed anyone to talk about it. Only after he had suppressed his emotions did he bring it up. This was because Diwu Qingro knew that Golden Horse Riders Department still retained the habits of Jianghu people. Only by grinding away the edges and corners of Jianghu people on a certain level could one truly possess one's own strength. Using the life of a king-level master to pay such a price was unavoidably expensive. However, Diwu Qingro was keenly aware that this was an excellent opportunity. The Golden Horse Riders Department could lose its throne, but it could never lose control. There was no doubt that Diwu Qingro had done a very good job in this regard. Third brother Yin's injury. Jing Menghen's face exposed a look of grief and indignation. My Menghen liquid can guarantee a person's vitality for a month regardless of how serious their injuries are. But third brother's legs. He suddenly raised his head and asked, Lord Cheng, I would like to ask, other than a few youngsters from aristocratic families, what other people did I encounter along the way? Cheng Yunhe was startled and asked, King-level leader Jing, what do you mean? As long as it was before taking the Menghen liquid, even if both of his legs were broken, I would still be able to restore them to their original state. However, third brother's legs are now completely paralyzed from the waist down. Jing Menghen's eyes were like blood as he stared at Cheng Yunhe. This kind of injury clearly occurred after he took the Menghen liquid. Cheng Yunhe raised his head and closed his eyes. After a long time, he let out a long sigh. He slightly gritted his teeth and said, regarding this matter, I don't know what is vitality and what is cultivation. I am only responsible for it and can only do so much. I have already done my best to bring him back. He raised his head and pointed a finger at his white neck. He coldly said, I can only guarantee that this corpse-like person has not been touched by anyone along the way. If king-level leader Jing does not believe me or has any doubts, my head is right here. Cheng Yi raised his head and proudly opened his eyes. He squinted and said, anyone from the Golden Horse Riders Department can come and take it. Cheng Yunhe's grievance and indignation had reached the extreme. I was only responsible for assisting the Golden Horse Riders Department. And I was following the Prime Minister's orders. Now you did not listen to my orders and did not cooperate with me, causing the mission to fail on the verge of success. I spared no effort and endured all kinds of difficulties and dangers to save your brother. Not only are you not grateful to me, but you even suspect that I secretly killed him? Official Cheng's words are too harsh, Yin Wutian gloomily said. His eyes were like a poisonous snake's. Obviously, he still did not fully believe Chang Yunhe's words. Harsh or not, justice is in everyone's heart. Chang Yunhe finally could not bear it anymore. He suddenly stood up and said loudly, if I did not want Yin Wufe to live, I could have silently killed him 10,000 times along the way. Now I have a half-paralyzed cripple. What good is it for me? Chang Yunhe was indescribably indignant. Enough. Diwu Qingro gently raised his hand and slowly turned to look at Yin Wutian, 4th king level leader Yin. Could it be that you think it would be better for your brother to die outside? Yin Wutian quivered and shivered. He then said, forgive me, Prime Minister. I only have some doubts. Then you should be suspicious of our enemy, not of the people who painstakingly brought your brother back. Diwu Qingro said sternly, Yin Wutian, you must be careful when you speak and do things. If you ruin anything because of your hatred, then you know the consequences. Kong Shang Xian had died, and Yin Wufe was crippled. The person who could not bear it the most was Yin Wutian. Diwu Qingro did not want to be so strict, but now he could only put aside the word favor. If he allowed Yin Wutian's hatred to spread, he did not know what would happen. Therefore, although Diwu Qingro did not want to, he could only suppress it. Yin Wutian took a deep breath and said sullenly, what Prime Minister said is right. Gao Sheng, do you know which clan King of Helchu used? Diwu Qingro asked. Gao Sheng had already inquired about this question 7 or 8 days ago. Now that Diwu Qingro asked, it had a different meaning. 10 days ago, there was news in Third Heaven that the members of Heimo clan had returned to Third Heaven. Gao Sheng said cautiously, but there was a joke. Heimo clan sent out 3 king-level leaders. When they returned, all 3 were seriously injured. Heimo. Yin Wutian's eyes lit up. Yes, Heimo. Gao Sheng said, according to legend, Heimo clan was attacked by Emo clan in Ironcloud Citadel. However, it was confirmed that no experts of Emo clan appeared in Ironcloud Citadel at that time. Jingmeng Han and Yin Wutian were breathing heavily. Their eyes were as round as bells. Later, king-level leader Soulcatcher was forced to tell the truth. Gao Sheng said slowly, it turned out that they had a fight with Golden Horse Riders Department. This matter has caused a huge uproar in Third Heaven. Jingmeng Han and Yin Wutian gritted their teeth. Heimo clan. Heimo clan. King of Helchu had a part to play in this matter. However, no matter what, the nature of this matter has changed. Gao Sheng said, the testimony of the 2 king-level leaders of Heimo clan was that King of Helchu had clearly stated that the opponent was Golden Horse Riders Department. However, Heimo clan owed King of Helchu a favor, so they had no choice but to help. Pay attention, the key point of this sentence is that King of Helchu had clearly stated this beforehand. Gao Sheng said seriously, therefore, Heimo clan cannot blame King of Helchu. Everyone understood this principle. For example, if I told you that the opponent was Japan's imperialist, but after hearing this you carried a bag of explosives and blew up Japan's imperial god, then it had nothing to do with me, right? Although I also wanted to, so, Heimo clan took responsibility for everything? Yin Wutian's eyes were like a volcano that was about to erupt. Upper 3 heavens cannot participate in the clan disputes of Upper 3 heavens, and Lower 3 heavens cannot participate in the dynasty disputes of Lower 3 heavens. This is the law of the heavens. Gao Sheng rolled his eyes and said indifferently, the king-level leaders of Heimo clan who violated the rules have already been taken in for questioning. No matter how this matter is handled, it is tantamount to an end. Therefore, it is extremely unwise for anyone to use this matter to make a fuss. There are arbitrators in the heavens. Perhaps King of Helchu had only used a loophole, but this matter has already passed. Heimo clan has already admitted it, so King of Helchu's matter is no more. But if King of Helchu uses the arbitrators to make a fuss, then the fate of Golden Horse Riders Department can be imagined. Gao Sheng's slender eyes exposed a sharp ray of light. Therefore, I think it would be better to suppress this matter and not let it go. Jing Meng Hun let out a deep breath, and the chair he was sitting on shattered with a kacha sound. Yin Wutiang clenched his fists, and his eyes were bloodshot. However, there was a trace of dejection in their expressions. Even an emperor-level master would not dare to challenge the rules of the heavens, let alone a king-level master. Yun He, tell me about those youngsters from aristocratic clans. Di Wuqingro waved his hand and suppressed his hatred. Now is the time to talk about business. Di Wuqingro's grasp of people's hearts and human nature had become more and more cautious after the last mistake. He was watertight. Those youngsters were arguing. I only heard that one of them was called Luo Kudi, one was called GMO, and the last one was surnamed Gu. As for the other two, I do not know their names. Chang Yun, he said cautiously, I also do not know whether they are from the clans of Upper Three Heavens or Upper Three Heavens. Luo Kudi is the second young master of the Luo clan of Upper Three Heavens. GMO is the second young master of the Ji clan of Upper Three Heavens. When Gao Sheng heard these names, his expression clearly tightened. As for Gu, could he be a member of the Gu clan? Di Wuqingro's expression was indifferent. His finger gently tapped on the table, and he did not speak for a long time. He only frowned and pondered, letting everyone digest Gao Sheng's words. Chapter 218. King of Hell Chu? Gao Sheng's eyes widened. No way. First, is Yunhe's luck really that good? At such a dangerous time, he went out and met with a group of aristocratic clan disciples? Plus, it was a group of Three Heavens clan disciples. Di Wuqingro smiled faintly. This is equivalent to a special trip to inform you that we are going to Great Province. You must be prepared. A cold light flashed in Di Wuqingro's eyes. Heart is somewhat unreasonable, right? Perhaps they said it unintentionally, and Mr. Chung intentionally remembered it. Gao Sheng pondered. The eyebrows on his handsome face slowly wrinkled. Maybe that is the case. But the second point is that they said they were going to rob, but in the end they did not rob anything. Could it be that they waited in that snowy weather just to have some fun in the wilderness? Di Wuqingro smiled. As for the reason that they were looking for king-level Master Yin, that is even more absurd. How could the aristocratic clan disciples of Three Heavens be so bored? Third, I simply do not believe in such a coincidence. Di Wuqingro said casually, just this one is enough. So, among these people, King of Hell Chu must be among them. Di Wuqingro snorted and said, and this encounter shows that King of Hell Chu will most likely come to Great Zhao to cause trouble. And if they come to Great Zhao, then they will most likely contact Yun He. Gao Sheng thought for a long time before slowly nodding. What Prime Minister said is indeed possible. If that's the case and we can't see through their disguise, then they will come here. Moreover, Yun He will personally cover for them. This means that the Golden Horse Riders Department is protecting them. Great Zhao is undoubtedly the safest place for them. Han Buchu thought of this and sucked in a cold breath. But now that Prime Minister has calculated it, we just need to open the net and wait for the fish to come. Gao Sheng sneered. If King of Hell Chu really comes, then he is walking right into the net. Capturing him will be as easy as blowing off dust. Not necessarily. Di Wuqingro pondered and said, King of Hell Chu would not use such a childish trick. There must be a deeper meaning behind this. He stood up and paced back and forth. He then muttered to himself, one is the Luo clan, one is the Ji clan, and one is the Gu clan. Three big clans of the Three Heavens. Humph humph. King of Hell Chu has spread this rumor. From this, we can infer that he has a close relationship with the young lords of several clans. King of Hell Chu doesn't have the strength right now. If he wants to deal with us, he will need to borrow some strength. Speaking of borrowing strength, these people should help him since their friendship isn't shallow. However, the people of the Lower Three Heavens aren't allowed to intervene in the matters of the Lower Three Heavens. So, these people can't help him openly. But, if we take the initiative to provoke them, then it's a different story. If King of Hell Chu cooperates with them to add fuel to the fire, and sow dissension once again, then it would be the same as Golden Horse Riders Department just having a fight with the Hayamo clan, and then turning around to face the three big clans. Is this King of Hell Chu's plan to borrow our strength again? Di Wuqingro gently rubbed his forehead with his hand and muttered, Is this another big trap by King of Hell Chu? As he thought about it, his eyes gradually revealed a sharp color, and he said, if we face the three big clans at the same time, our Golden Horse Riders department will be in real danger. Han Buchu, Chang Yunhe, Gao Shang, Jing Menghun, and Yin Wutian quietly listened to Di Wuqing's analysis. He talked about the dangerous situation of the Golden Horse Riders department being destroyed at every turn. Everyone's backs were drenched in cold sweat. If this was really King of Hell Chu's plan, then it could be said that it was all linked to each other. It was extremely dangerous. If they really thought that they had found a loophole in King of Hell Chu's plan and excitedly surrounded him, then it was almost foreseeable that the three big clans would immediately become enemies. Since we know, then it's not scary anymore. Han Buchu pondered and said, we can start contacting the higher-ups of the three big clans and let them know about this matter. We can't borrow their strength, but they may not be willing to be used by King of Hell Chu. That's right. Di Wuqing said. Let Gao Shang handle this matter. How about it? Rest assured, Xiang Mao. There will be no loopholes in this matter. Gao Shang said confidently. Knowing the other party's intentions, if we can't destroy it, then we are really stupid. Gao Shang, you have to grasp the timing. Di Wuqing said casually. If King of Hell Chu wants to come, let him come first. Before that, keep in touch with these clans and know where they are. Wait until King of Hell Chu arrives. Then inform them of this matter. Gao Shang's spirit was roused as he said, yes. This is the first matter. Di Wuqing sighed and said with some loneliness, Iron Cloud Nation's ruler, Tai Shicheng, fought with me for many years. He could be said to be a hero of his generation. I've always wanted to keep him alive to make use of him. I didn't expect that he would die in such weather. The plan I've been preparing for so many years has become useless. There's something fishy about this. Di Wuqing said casually. Tai Shicheng was living well. Why did he die at this time? And Du Shiqing also disappeared at this time. If this matter has nothing to do with King of Hell Chu, I don't believe it. Order all the spies in Iron Cloud Nation to immediately spread rumors that King of Hell Chu killed Tai Shicheng. Tai Shicheng killed Tai Shicheng. Regarding this matter, Buchu, you write a story and spread it out. If Tai Butian is suspicious, that would be the best. Even if Tai Butian doesn't believe it, someone will. Yes, Prime Minister. One more thing, Tai Shicheng died and Tai Butian ascended the throne. Everyone knows that a nation cannot be without a ruler for a day. But there is still something to be done. Another rumor is that Tai Butian did not hesitate to kill his own father for the throne. And before his father's body was even cold, he hurriedly ascended the throne. His nature is cold, heartless, and unfilial. He deserves to be punished by the whole world. For this matter, Buchu, you will be in charge of fabricating it. Yes. Third, when Tai Shicheng died, my army attacked. At that time, Tai Longcheng was at the border and could not leave. Haha, we all know that he could not leave. But Tai Longcheng did not go back to attend the funeral. This is the truth. Di Wuqing said, thus there are rumors. One is that Tai Longcheng gathered his own troops and did not accept the new emperor. He wanted to rebel. The second is that Tai Longcheng thought that his brother's death was not clear, so he did not dare to go back. But when Tai Longcheng went back, he would ask Tai Butian for an explanation. Iron Cloud's internal strife is imminent. Buchu, these matters are for you to handle. Yes. Also, even though Du Shiqing is missing, we can make a story out of it. Say that Tai Butian killed Du Shiqing in order to seize the throne, and to let his father return to heaven. This rumor must be clever and naturally spread to those who have dealings with Du Shiqing, such as aristocratic families or sects. Du Shiqing's son can help with this. Yes. Han Buchu's expression became more and more admiring. Di Wuqing's plans, even though they were only rumors, were extremely vicious. As long as they were properly controlled, the effect would be great. The most terrifying thing in the world was the mouths of the common people. As long as the common people believed it to be true, then, through word of mouth, even a false rumor would become true. For the sake of stabilizing the throne, Tai Butian let King of Hell Chu massacre meritorious officials and old officials who were loyal to Tai Shicheng. Even Iron Cloud Saint Tang Xiansheng became a spy. This is the biggest joke in the world. Do you understand? Understood. Hurry up and do it. Diwu Qingro smiled warmly and murmured, even though King of Hell Chu ruined one of my great plans. But, how can I let you do as you please? Gao Shang said, Prime Minister, if this is the case at the border, should we allow the soldiers to relax a bit? After all, the weather is very cold right now. Many soldiers are suffering from frostbite. Some even froze to death. Diwu Qingro's eyebrows twitched. He pondered for a moment and said, use all of your financial resources to send cotton clothes to the border. However, the military oppression must continue. We are suffering, but Iron Cloud is suffering even more than we are. Moreover, with such rumors spreading everywhere, we cannot let Tai Longcheng go back. Yes, Golden Horse Riders Department should be properly reorganized during this time. King-level Master Yin should rest well. Diwu Qingro said warmly, in this cold weather, Golden Horse Riders Department should not move out for the time being. Take care of King-level Master Kong's funeral. When the time comes, I will personally go and send King-level Master Kong off. Yes, Jing Menghun and Yin Wu Tian agreed at the same time. When Kong Shang Xian was mentioned, their noses turned sour. They choked and said, thank you, Prime Minister. As for the sex, let King of Hell Chu suffer. Carry out part of Beyond the Heavens sex plan in this cold weather. Let the big sex attack Beyond the Heavens sect. We cannot destroy it, but we must kill some of its people. Try to kill as many as possible. Diwu Qingro said casually, I heard that King of Hell Chu's master is called Meng Chaoran. If his master dies, I wonder if King of Hell Chu will be sad? Even if King Chu Ran is inhumane, I am afraid he will shed a few tears. Gao Sheng said with a smile. In the depths of his eyes there was a hidden chill. Yes, Diwu Qingro's series of methods were a combination of sinister and vicious. If it was me who was against Diwu Qingro, I can imagine how badly I would be in trouble right now. Now, all of this is being done by King of Hell Chu and Tai Butian. These two people must not be feeling too good. Chapter 219. Diwu Qingro reached out his hand and took it. He said regretfully, with these two things we can save the lives of two experts at a critical moment. Yin Kuan He, you don't have to worry about it. Then, he shook the jade box and said, this jade spirit ginseng is. Suddenly, he made a sound of surprise and his eyes froze. He looked at Cheng Yun Quanha and frowned. Yun Quanha, this? No one has touched it, right? Cheng Yun Kuan He immediately panicked and said with a pale face, Prime Minister, is there a problem? Jade spirit ginseng is a spiritual object. Even through the jade box, one can feel its spiritual energy. Why did I not feel it this time? Diwu Qingro asked in confusion. As he said this, Jing Menghun and the others also felt that something was wrong. Absolutely no one touched it. This thing has always been with me. Cheng Yun Kuan He said without hesitation. Diwu Qingro weighed the jade box in his hand. He slightly lowered his head. After thinking for a while he looked up and smiled. It's okay. Since the thing is back, it's good. Yun Kuan He, you must be tired. Go and rest early. As he said this, he put the jade box into his bosom without even looking at it. Then he said with a smile, I'll keep this thing close to me. Then he smiled and said, everyone can go back. Bu Chu, you have to be busy for the next few days. Gao Shang, you have to keep a low profile during this period of time. Don't be targeted by the arbitrators. The two king-level leaders should also rest early. If you need any medicine for king-level leader Yin's injury, feel free to come and get it from me. Everyone bowed in unison and left the room. When only Diwu Qingro was left in the study room, he slowly stood up. He frowned and slowly paced back and forth. He muttered, this matter should not have happened. He took out the jade box from his pocket. He gently opened it. Sure enough, there was no jade spirit ginseng inside. It was completely empty. Diwu Qingro looked at the empty jade box and thought for a long time. His eyes flashed. Iron Cloud Citadel, heaven-mending pavilion in this cold place, was once again bustling with activity. But this time, the people of Butian Pavilion did not complain. Instead, they were happy and proud. King of Hell Chu. After all, he was King of Hell Chu. He did not fall. King of Hell Chu didn't fall. then Heaven Mending Pavilion would still be Heaven Mending Pavilion. Those people who had spread rumors about King of Hell Chu not being able to make it humph are now being dealt with by us. King of Hell Chu is not only capable, but very capable. Emptying half of the imperial court, such boldness, such a bold move. Who would dare? However, King of Hell Chu didn't even frown, and directly attacked. Compared to the bustling Heaven Mending Pavilion, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion was noisy. After they returned, they had different opinions about Lian Fanlei. GMO believed that such a person should be ruthlessly beaten up. Beat him up so badly that even his mother couldn't recognize him. Luo Kadi thought that he should go straight to the Hua family. Gu Duxing snorted at their thoughts. Big Boss Chu thought that using power to suppress people was the best way for these people. The matter had already passed for a long time, but the people from the Heavenly Armament Pavilion were still quarreling endlessly. In the end, no one knew what happened. GMO and Luo Kadi quarreled. Originally, their opinions were similar, but Luo Kadi betrayed them and stood on Chu Yang's side. He turned his head and wantonly attacked his former allies. He said that GMO was short-sighted, immature, and had a bad temper. He didn't have any self-restraint and wasn't calm at all. GMO was furious. He immediately assumed the posture of the third elder brother. Pao Zun was also furious. The two of them started to quarrel and started to wrestle with each other. Bang! 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 Sounds were unceasingly heard. Chu Yang didn't have time to mediate the fight. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Minister Chu murmured, "This young man's anger is too big. He needs to vent." He turned around and walked out. Gu Yuxing followed. I left Su Butong to guard the two and continuously sneak attack them. And his sneak attack made the two fight even more fiercely. What's the next step? Gu Duxing asked. There is a plan, but I am thinking about how to proceed. Chu Yang pondered. It should be to go to Great Zhao. But the time is not ripe yet. Use the foreshadowing you left that day in the snow? Gu Duxing's eyes lit up. What time is not ripe yet? Chu Yang shook his head and sighed. The time was not the time. Chu Yang had been looking forward to the return of the second fragment of Calamity Sword. Until now there had been no news. He was now at the peak of 7th grade martial master, and was about to become a martial great master. Duxing, let's exchange pointers, Chu Yang said. Gu Duxing's eyes lit up and said, okay. During this time, he had been cultivating with all his might according to the revered Berserker sword technique. Now he was already a sword great master. Just one more step. He could enter the revered sword master realm. Gu Duxing was also looking forward to the day of his breakthrough. He still clearly remembered Chu Yang's words. The revered Berserker sword technique can only help you enter the revered sword master realm as soon as possible. But after that, the revered Berserker sword technique cannot be used anymore. If you use it again, it will cause your mind to be confused by the sword technique and enter madness. But at that time we have other ways to let you advance quickly. Other ways to advance quickly. Right now, Gu Duxing was more eager than anyone. In daily cultivation, he was also the most hardworking among them. Sometimes the degree of his effort was so high that even Chu Yang was behind him. Because Gu Miaoling, Sister Xiao Miao, was still suffering and waiting for me to save her. Gu Duxing's heart felt like it was being fried. Please, please. Both of them held an ordinary steel sword in their hands. Previously, when they exchanged pointers, they used their fists and legs. But this time Chu Yang proposed to use a sword. Although Gu Duxing was surprised, he did not think much of it. While muttering, GMO, Luoku, Disu and Butong walked out with bruises all over their faces. When they saw Gu Duxing and Chu Yang about to exchange pointers, they immediately became interested. In an instant, the three of them who were fighting like pigs, each took a small stool and squeezed together. They put their arms around each other's shoulders and looked forward to the fight. I'm coming. Chu Yang drew his sword and took the lead. His two legs crossed and suddenly rushed forward like a whirlwind. With just one move, Chu Yang's body had already become a faint shadow. Fleeting snow cloud steps. Damn! Boss has improved so fast. GMO exclaimed. The current Chu Yang. Compared to the day before when he exchanged pointers with him, how could he just improve by a level? Gu Duxing's face was cold and hard. He held his sword horizontally. His two legs did not move, but they automatically slid forward. With a clang, the two swords crossed. Be careful. Chu Yang's eyes revealed a trace of a smile. Gu Duxing's martial power was much higher than his. The one who should be saying be careful should be Gu Duxing, but Chu Yang actually said it first. I know. Gu Duxing had just said these two words when he suddenly felt that something was wrong. His sword seemed to have suddenly sunk into water. Along with his whole body, he also felt an abundant buoyancy. There was also a kind of blockage unique to water. He could not use any strength. It seemed that if he used any more strength, his wrist would be broken. Gu Duxing was shocked. He immediately retreated. He was puzzled. Although he controlled his martial power and tried to suppress it to a level similar to Chu Yang's. But he should not feel this way. As he retreated, the feeling became even more obvious. It was as if a raging tide had suddenly appeared in front of him, bringing with it a violent impact, an irresistible thrust, and a strong buoyancy and stickiness. It was coming at him from every direction. And Chu Yang's sword only made a slash in the air? Gu Duxing's face flushed red. He shouted and increased his martial power by 20% to block this wave of attack. Chu Yang's long sword drew a circle and retracted. The dense sword energy suddenly turned into a tranquil lake between the two of them. The soft power of water? Gu Duxing looked at Chu Yang's sword thoughtfully. Yes, it is the soft power of water. But it has not reached great success, Chu Yang said indifferently. Gu Duxing smiled bitterly. He had just used the power of a third-grade sword great master. He was still forced to be unable to attack by a 7th-grade martial master. It was like this and it still had not reached great success? Gu Duxing gently closed his eyes. He immediately felt that in front of him, there was a calm but repelling force like a lake. And Chu Yang was clearly on the other side. It really has not reached great success. Your soft power of water is too rigid. Gu Duxing roared and slashed with his sword. This is the Gu clan's wave-splitting slash. It is a sword technique that has been practiced in water. It has reached great success. With one slash it can split the oncoming wave in half. And his clothes are not wet at all. Luo Kudi's eyebrows jumped. Using the wave-splitting slash to deal with boss soft power of water is just like one thing conquering another. Not necessarily. GMO snorted. Watch, don't talk nonsense. You are as knowledgeable as a clown. Luo Kudi was furious. He was about to go up and punch. Suddenly he exclaimed, how can this be? He saw Chu Yang retreat continuously, but his sword continued to stab. Every stab brought about a different wave of energy, attacking Gu Duxing. After 17 consecutive stabs, Chu Yang suddenly stopped retreating and went up to meet it. The sword in his hand seemed to have turned into a soft willow branch at this moment. It danced and went up to meet it. Gu Duxing's sword momentum, which could unleash monstrous waves, was actually useless in the face of this extremely gentle attack. He was easily enveloped by the gentle power. Gu Duxing was shocked. Chu Yang's soft power of water, under his wave-splitting slash, actually achieved a new breakthrough. He had truly mastered the characteristics of water. During this period of time, Chu Yang had been tortured thousands of times. Finally, today he achieved the most perfect result. A satisfied smile appeared on Chu Yang's face. He was about to raise his sword to attack when he suddenly had a thought. The sword spirit's voice suddenly sounded, with a hint of exclamation. You have finally understood the power of water. The power of nature is beginning to show signs. From today onwards, you can use the space of calamity. Space of calamity? Chu Yang was shocked. Yes. The sword spirit sighed and said, you are the first to open the space of calamity in half a year. Chu Yang only felt a shock in his heart. In his dantian, an inexplicable and mysterious feeling suddenly rose. When he closed his eyes, he saw a mysterious space. It opened up to him. At this moment, the sword tip of the calamity sword in his dantian suddenly shook violently. Under his feet, there was also an urgent calling. Chapter 220. Gu Duxing's sword actually felt Chu Yang's force field relax in this sticky feeling. He followed the flow of energy and attacked. The tip of the sword stopped in front of Chu Yang. Chu Yang's hair fluttered violently for a while. Gu Duxing was a little depressed. Who would suddenly meditate in the middle of an intense battle? If it wasn't for my control, wouldn't this sword be in trouble? But Chu Yang suddenly meditating was a fact. Gu Duxing had no choice but to change his role at once from a fighter to a protector. On a distant treetop, a man in green was so angry that his veins were almost popping out. Bastard! How could he suddenly meditate in the middle of a battle with the sword master? He's taking his life as a joke. The man in green was almost about to go down and kick this unruly guy's butt. How generous! Even though he was already far beyond their level, in that situation just now, if Gu Duxing didn't stop in time, he definitely wouldn't have been able to save him. Thinking of this, the man in green was sweating all over. Before your identity is clear, you can't die. Chu Yang only felt that his mind was spinning. Suddenly, his entire spiritual power was sucked away. He suddenly felt a strange feeling of heaviness in his head. He closed his eyes and found that he seemed to be standing in a strange space. In this short period of time, the mental energy he had used up had already overdrawn him. Since his rebirth, he had never felt so weak. Chu Yang forced himself to shake his head. He opened his eyes and returned to reality. He said weakly, "I need to rest. Duxing, help me in." Gu Duxing was shocked. From the beginning of the battle to Chu Yang suddenly meditating, it was only a short period of time. But at this moment, even Gu Duxing could feel Chu Yang's weakness. It was as if all of his energy had been sucked out of him all of a sudden. Gu Duxing couldn't help but guess. What was Chu Yang's realization at this moment? To be able to use up so much mental energy in such a short period of time? Hearing Chu Yang's words, Gu Duxing did not dare to be negligent. He immediately carried Chu Yang on his back and rushed into Chu Yang's room at top speed. He placed Chu Yang on the bed, then immediately poured a cup of water and brought it over. After thinking for a while, he took out a few healing pills from the clan and crushed them, melting them in the water. Chu Yang gulped down the water in 2 mouthfuls. He felt refreshed. He said in a hoarse voice, "I'm going to meditate for a while. Don't let anyone come in." After he said the last word, he immediately sank into deep meditation. Gu Duxing had wanted to persuade him, but seeing the situation, he had no choice but to leave quietly. "How is boss?" GMO and the others immediately surrounded him, their faces full of concern. Big brother may have a great realization. Gu Duxing's eyes showed that he was deep in thought as he said, "No one is allowed to go in and disturb him." As he spoke, he frowned and muttered to himself, what kind of comprehension could be so powerful? Could it be the way of martial arts? GMO and the others looked at each other in amazement. The way of martial arts? Could it be the highest level of martial arts, second only to the way of heaven? Could it be that Chu Yang had comprehended this level because of the battle with Gu Duxing? The eyes of the 3 lit up like searchlights at the same time. GMO was the first to jump up excitedly. "Second brother, I want to fight with you." "Fifth brother, the 2 of you help protect big brother." Luo Kadi and Miao Butong rolled their eyes. "What second brother?" Gu Duxing was completely displeased. "You should call him second brother. You are second brother," GMO said proudly, as if he had taken advantage of the situation. The pleasure of taking advantage of the sharpness of the tongue. Gu Duxing was furious and said coldly, "If you call me that again, I'll beat you until you become second brother. The soft kind." GMO couldn't ask for more. He laughed and teased, "A word dog ant. Dog ant. Second brother, if you have the guts, come." Gu Duxing roared angrily and rushed to the ground. The 2 of them rolled and rolled into a ball. Thus, this young master GMO, who also wanted to comprehend something, started to scream miserably. Chu Yang regulated his breathing for a while before he felt that his spiritual energy had recovered a little. Thinking about that feeling just now, he actually had some lingering fear. That feeling was as if his entire body was weightless and rolling in the boundless universe. It was a terrifying feeling that he couldn't control himself at all. After calming himself down, he calmed his mind and immersed himself in that wonderful state again. As expected, when he opened his mind, a weightless feeling immediately attacked him. But this time Chu Yang was prepared. When this feeling came, He closed his eyes and relaxed his consciousness. The next moment he felt as if his feet were on solid ground. Then he opened his eyes. What appeared in front of him was a huge space. Or rather, it should be said that it was an empty hall. Those things that he had asked the sword spirit to collect were all piled up in a corner of the hall. This hall was more than 100 feet tall, and had a radius of nearly 100 feet. It was surrounded by a hazy pink fog, and the top was also covered by pink fog. It was so hazy that one couldn't see far. In front of him there was something that looked like a large stone tablet. It was emitting purple light, and there seemed to be words engraved on it. When he stepped forward to take a look, Chu Yang could not help but be completely petrified. His mouth opened wide as he muttered to himself. Amethyst, the large stone monolith in front of him, was the purple crystal. The priceless treasure of the Chongtian continent. Moreover, looking at its luster, it was not inferior to his own purple crystal jade pendant. An ordinary purple crystal the size of a fist was enough to allow a martial honor to advance by 1 rank. And the piece in front of him looked like it weighed more than 10,000 pounds. And the characteristic of the purple crystal was that after absorbing the energy inside, it would turn into a pure purple crystal jade. And these amethyst jades were the symbol of nobility. Chu only knew that it was impossible for such purple crystals to appear in the lower 3 heavens and the upper 3 heavens. Even in the upper 3 heavens, it was a treasure that all the major forces would fight over. If the piece in front of him was taken out, it would not be strange at all that it would cause a world war in the upper 3 heavens. Shaking his head, he bit his tongue hard. A piercing pain attacked him, and Chu Yang realized that he was not dreaming. He opened his eyes wide and stepped forward to take a look. On the huge purple crystal, there were a few lines of words that were like dragons flying and phoenixes dancing. They were about to break through the surface of the monolith and fly out. Chu Yang looked, and his eyes seemed to be attracted by these few lines of words. Tribulation Chongtian. It's lonely at the top. The palm turns the cycle of reincarnation. The palm holds the world. A glance of wind and thunder, a rage of the cold sea. One hand breaks the firmament, one sword dances the sky. Good spirit, Chu Yang murmured. After the initial discomfort, he had gradually adapted to this place. He faintly understood that this should be the space of the tribulation sword in his mind, and what he was here now was not his physical body. It should also be a divine fate at this moment. The dense fog stirred, and a blurry figure appeared. It slowly became clear, and formed into a tall and slender figure. It walked out of the thick fog at the edge. After more than 10,000 years, I'm finally here again. This person looked at the surrounding scenery and said with a sigh. His voice was filled with sorrow. You are the sword spirit? When this figure opened his mouth, Chu Yang recognized him from his unique accent. I am the sword spirit? This figure was at a loss, and he actually asked a question in return. He stretched out a hand and touched the purple crystal monolith. His face was full of disappointment, and he said, Sword Spirit, such a noble name, how can I bear it? You are not the Sword Spirit? When two become one, it is the Sword Spirit. This illusory figure's eyes suddenly emitted a divine light of desire. I am alone, only the Sword Spirit. Only when a sword has a soul, it has a spirit. Only when a sword has a spirit, it has a spirit. Oh. Chu Yang nodded as if he understood. He vaguely remembered that this conversation seemed to have been answered before. But in this space, he couldn't help but ask again. How do I use this space? Chu Yang asked. It is in your mind. You can use it however you want, the figure said lightly. The tribulation space can accommodate all things. You can do whatever you want. But before you get the 7th fragment of the tribulation sword, the tribulation space cannot accommodate living things. I see. Chu Yang nodded silently. Now, you can go and get the 2nd fragment of the tribulation sword. The figure stood quietly inside. There is someone outside watching you. His martial power is not bad. It is the little guy who gave you the purple crystal that day. He didn't have any evil intentions. I won't help you. I haven't been here for more than 10,000 years. I want to stay here quietly for a while. Chu Yang's heart shook and he said, okay. With a thought, he had already retreated from that strange space. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his mouth, and there was a sticky smell of blood. He touched it with his hand, and his hand was full of blood. After a while he understood. When he bit his tongue he only felt pain inside. It turned out that he had bitten his tongue open. The sword spirit's words caused a great disturbance in Chu Yang's heart. The person who gave you the purple crystal. He didn't have any evil intentions towards you. If he doesn't have any ill intentions, then that's it. Is he really related to my background? This thought arose in Chu Yang's heart. His heart suddenly felt very frightened. He had been abandoned for more than 10 years. If he counted his previous life, he had been abandoned for more than 10 years. The mystery of his background had always been a knot in Chu Yang's heart. But now that there was a glimmer of hope, even Chu Yang's tenacious heart became worried. For a moment he didn't know what he was thinking. It was a subtle feeling similar to homesickness. He longed to know the truth. He longed to die. But he was also afraid of knowing the truth. He was also scared to death. Before he knew the truth, there was still hope in his heart. But if the truth was indeed the cruelest kind, then there would be no room for him to turn around. Chu Yang was stunned for a long time. Then he sighed softly and pressed a button in the room. A secret passage appeared. Chu Yang stepped in, and the entrance of the secret passage slowly closed. Chapter 221. Just as Chu Yang's figure disappeared, the space in the room seemed to distort. Then, the figure of the man in green mysteriously appeared in the room. Secret room. The man in green's eyes flashed with pride. He touched his chin and murmured, "Looks like this guy's things are in the secret room. Next time when they go out I'll go in and take a look. If I can find the jade essence I'll be rich. Just the reward from the old man is enough for me to bear the consequences. But the most important thing now is to find a place to drink wine and celebrate." How sinister. Such a small thing actually hid things in such a secretive manner. But he still can't hide from me. He smiled proudly for a while and suddenly disappeared. Obviously, the man in green who thought he found a big clue couldn't wait to celebrate. As for breaking in now, that wouldn't do. If he triggered the mechanism inside and alerted him, wouldn't he be disappointed again? This little guy's alertness is not ordinary. It's best to wait until he's gone. Chu Yang had already walked into the secret passage. It looked like he was walking very fast, but his hands were behind his back, quietly laying down spider webs one after another behind him. They were so dense that there were hundreds of them crisscrossing behind him. Each one was as thick as a spider's web. In the darkness it was impossible to distinguish them. But as long as they were touched, Chu Yang would be able to detect them immediately. This was the great technique of the Calamity Sword to avoid tracking. Now that the sword spirit was resting, he relied on this to guard against the man in green. Even if he didn't have any evil intentions, the less people knew that he was the master of the Calamity Sword, the better. This was the root of the disaster. But Chu Yang's action was superfluous. The man in green didn't follow me in. Entering the lowest level of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, Chu Yang was already 100 feet underground. He could already feel a slight chill. This had nothing to do with the weather. It was the deep cold underground. It took a lot of effort to build this place. It was surrounded by lake water on all sides. He had to ensure that the water couldn't seep in, and the second fragment of the Calamity Sword was here. Chu Yang calmed himself down and operated the God Tribulation Overlapping Heaven Divine technique with all his might. The sword tip of the Tribulation Sword in his dantian let out a joyful cry and automatically rushed out of his dantian and into his right finger. On his finger, a faint cold light flashed, emitting a cold light that was at least 10 feet long. The next moment, Chu Yang lowered his hand, and the cold light of the Tribulation Sword slashed down almost impatiently. After several swords, there didn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary on the ground, but it had already been divided into several large pieces. Beneath the ground, a joyous mood could be felt. It was as if a child who had been away from home for a long time suddenly saw his mother. Chu Yang's heart was suddenly filled with joy. He put away the sword point and concentrated his martial power into both of his hands. Then, he inserted them into the ground and suddenly lifted them up. A large piece of rock that was close to a kilogram in weight was lifted up by him. Then came the next one. After a series of blocks, the previous stone chamber was almost filled up, but a huge hole appeared on the ground. There was no waste at all. After these stones were moved away, a small strange spring water appeared on the ground. The water was milky white and it gurgled out. The strange thing about this spring water was that although it was gurgling out, it didn't overflow at all. After it came out, it kept spinning in place, but it didn't even soak the fist-sized spring water. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. This scene was the same as in his previous life. Moreover, this spring water had an inexplicable effect of strengthening one's body. Back then, when he drank until he was full, he only felt that he was full of vitality. Moreover, it was very difficult for him to feel tired mentally. From then on, even if his body was injured, it wouldn't leave any scars, and he could recover in a few days. Chu Yang guessed that it should be related to this spring water. It was a pity that he only drank that one time. When he took out the second part, the spring water suddenly disappeared. This matter made Chu Yang feel extremely regretful. Moreover, in his previous life, the tribulation sword was just a weapon in his hand. It wasn't like in this life, where it became invisible. Chu Yang looked at this spring water, and his heart was in a mess. This was a good thing. It would be a pity if he couldn't keep it quickly. He had no choice but to call out the sword spirit again. Is there any way to preserve this spring water? The sword spirit snorted disdainfully and said, "It's just some vitality spring water. How can this be considered a good thing? It's just nourishing the sword edge. It's far inferior to the 7th part of the crystal spirit spring. Are you interested in this? Although this thing isn't good, but isn't it useful now?" When Chu Yang said although it's not good, he was quite conflicted and unwilling. In his view, this was a top-grade good thing. The sword spirit looked at Chu Yang with a look that said, "You're just a bumpkin who hasn't seen the world." The corner of his mouth twitched and he said, "Just move this spring water into the tribulation space. Do you still need me to teach you?" How do I move it?" Chu Yang sweated profusely. "Put the sword tip above the spring water, and use your mind to communicate with the space, and then take it." Sigh, to think that back then I accompanied Calamity Sword and dominated the world. But now, the sword spirit felt that it was an insult to be with such a retard. He couldn't help but sigh, as if he was casting pearls before swine. Minister Chu swallowed his anger and agreed. He took out the sword tip again, and his mind sank into the tribulation space. He shouted, "Take it." "Do you have to shout?" The sword spirit was exasperated at Chu Yang's failure to live up to his expectations. He chattered disdainfully, "I've never seen someone as stupid as you. You're home. There's nothing for you to do. Go back and continue to think about old times." Chu Yang saw that the spring had successfully disappeared in front of him. Then a spring water appeared in the tribulation space in his mind. It was bubbling with gurgling sounds. Minister Chu was overjoyed, but anger rose in his heart. Then, he swiftly pulled out the bridge after crossing it. "You!" The sword spirit pointed angrily at Chu Yang. After a long while, he disappeared resentfully. This time Minister Chu was very angry. "Little guy, you want to fight with me? Although you're a little old, you're still too young." Minister Chu was very happy. He couldn't help but feel a little smug. The spirit spring is in my hands, and the second part is in the spirit spring. This is called great. His mind sank into the tribulation space. He approached the spring water and laughed foolishly for a while. Then, he carefully inserted the sword tip of the tribulation sword into it. Faintly, there was a tinkling sound. Chu Yang's heart suddenly rose. It was the feeling of a couple who were passionately in love suddenly reuniting in the ruins of war. Cough cough. It seems that the sword tip and the second part of the tribulation sword are embracing each other happily. Chu Yang's heart shuddered. A layer of goosebumps appeared all over his body. He couldn't help but reach out and scratch. Then a cool feeling came from his arm. It seemed that something had entered his dantian along his meridians. Chu Yang's consciousness returned to reality in an instant. His mind sank into his dantian. Looking inside, he saw a shining sword tip approaching the sword tip. In the next moment, the back of the sword tip emitted a pink light. The front of the sword tip emitted a milky white light. They suddenly mixed together. Chu Yang only felt a loud bang in his mind. His entire soul seemed to have completely collapsed at this moment, scattering into the boundless night sky. A mysterious feeling rose in his heart. He was deep underground, but he could clearly feel his thoughts rising up. In front of his eyes, a sharp sword tip emitted a light that swallowed heaven and earth, rushing straight into the sky. In the next moment, the sword tip emitted a blazing light, covering the light of the sun, moon, and stars in the sky. In the Chongtian continent, whether it was the lower three heavens, the upper three heavens, or the lower three heavens at the same time, suddenly fell into a vast expanse of white. Chu Yang suddenly remembered something that Meng Chaoran had said when he was evaluating the sword. The sword tip, next to the sword tip, is the front half of the sword body. The sharp edge is the sword tip. This part has the greatest power and the strongest killing power. Double-sided blade, double-sided groove, double-sided kill. It's suitable for slashing, waving, slashing, sweeping. Chu Yang seemed to have understood something. It seemed that this sword tip was a killing weapon. At this moment, the sword tip and sword tip in his dantian had perfectly merged. They couldn't be distinguished from each other. A bright light was emitted from the sword tip in his dantian, shooting into Chu Yang's sea of consciousness. A section of sword technique suddenly appeared just like that. A sword tip that has been famous since ancient times, whistling winds and clouds from the west to the east. The sun and moon are the generals of thunder, splitting mountains and breaking peaks freely. The sword tip flashed. Chu Yang could clearly see that on one side of the sword ridge, there was a small sun symbol, and on the other side, there was a crescent moon symbol. The sun and moon are the generals of thunder. What does it mean? Chu Yang frowned and pondered carefully. In the space of consciousness, the sword spirit shouted coldly, "Watch." Suddenly, his figure rose up, and an illusory long sword appeared in his hand. In Chu Yang's space of consciousness, the sword momentum slowly unfolded. The sword momentum of the sword tip was different from that of the sword tip. The sword momentum of the sword tip was filled with a threatening, murderous aura, even before it was released. It was a kind of arrogance and momentum that ignored everything, including heaven and earth. No matter what was in front of the sword tip, it would be cut down one by one. The second section is the sword tip. The sword tip is the most powerful, but it is also the easiest to make people suspicious. So before your wings are fully grown, use it with caution. The sword spirit reminded him with a cold face. Chu Yang didn't have the time to listen to what the sword spirit was saying. He was completely immersed in this mysterious sword momentum, and his own cultivation unknowingly soared by leaps and bounds. If Chu Yang was paying attention now, he would realize that the sword tip in his dantian was constantly emitting a gentle power, slowly transforming his meridians and increasing his cultivation. 7th grade martial master. Breakthrough, early 8th grade, peak 8th grade, continued with an unstoppable breakthrough. Grade, peak of grade. The sword tip was still shining, still persistently pushing forward. It was like a cold-faced and emotionless swordsman, killing the enemy in front of him without any expression. Under the power of the sword tip, each and every one of the cultivation barriers were like clay chickens and pottery dogs, disintegrating in an instant. Sword Great Master. Chapter 222. The power of the sword edge was still coming out firmly. It was full of a domineering aura. It seemed that if no one stopped it, it would directly push Chu Yang to become a supreme martial artist. Enough! The sword spirit finally stopped it. Even if the sword spirit was worried that Chu Yang's realm was unstable, in the face of the sword edge's tyrannical aura, he could only let it vent for a while. He didn't dare to stop it forcefully. The domineering edge of the sword had always been a character that could do whatever he wanted in the land of the Calamity Sword. The sword edge didn't move and continued to push forward indifferently. Finally, when the sword spirit was about to explode, the sword edge stopped. Chu Yang's realm remained at the peak of 2nd grade Sword Great Master. In the face of such a situation, the sword spirit could only sigh. He couldn't stop it at all except for remedial actions. The sword edge was originally a sharp weapon. It was an intruder. It would be bad if it stopped its sharpness. Chu Yang finally woke up from the mysterious sword intent. He let out a long breath. The sword edge's 4 words were the sword technique of becoming one with the sword. He was already sure of this. Using the aura to drive the sword momentum. Using the sword momentum to drive the sword style. Using the sword style to stimulate the aura of the body. And so on until the sword edge reached the body. Once the sword was out, it was violent and domineering. It was, in the world only I am supreme. That was the meaning of this sword. Chu Yang frowned and pondered with rapt attention. The sword technique demonstrated by the sword spirit not only contains arrogance, bloodthirstiness and murderousness, but also endless desolation. That's the loneliness accumulated from being invincible throughout the ages. Chu Yang felt that he wouldn't be able to reach this realm in a short time. He slowly calmed his breathing and opened his eyes. He was about to restore the ground, but when he lifted a stone with both hands, Chu Yang exclaimed in surprise. He was so surprised that he almost dropped the stone and hit his foot. When did I become so strong? I didn't feel the weight of the stone at all when I lifted it? He inadvertently looked into his dantian and was suddenly shocked. If the capacity of his dantian was only a mouthful before he came in, then it had undoubtedly become a big lake now. The mist was vast and boundless. He tried to raise his chi and rushed towards the barrier of the 8th grade martial master. However, his path was vast and mighty, completely unobstructed. Chu Yang's eyes involuntarily widened. He continued to control his yuan qi and tried to break through to the martial master level. Once again, he did not encounter any obstacles. Hardening his heart, he charged towards 1st grade martial great master at last. I'm Rong Ko. Chu Yang finally jumped up when his breakthrough to 3rd grade martial great master was finally stopped. As he jumped, he forgot that he was still holding onto a large rock. He was actually hugging a 500-kilogram stone, and jumped more than 10 feet before falling back down with a plop. In a daze, as if he was in a dream, he moved the rocks back to their original positions. For the last one, he simply twisted his waist. Unknowingly, with an extremely coquettish posture, he used his buttocks to push the 1,000-pound rock into the air with a pew sound, and it fell into the final hole seamlessly. All I did was blink my eyes. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Martial Great Master? And I'm at the peak of 2nd grade Martial Great Master? Chu Yang scratched his head and fiercely pinched his arm. A burst of intense pain woke Minister Chu up as if he had just woken up from a dream. It's true. I've really broken through. And it's as if I'm flying. Chu Yang's entire body floated out. When he came out to take a look, he was shocked. Gu Duxing's face was heavy as he looked up at the sky. Luo Kedi and Miao Butong also had extremely heavy expressions. It was as if there was something that made these people so conflicted that their heads hurt. As for Jiamo was sprawled on the ground. His clothes were tattered, his nose was bruised, and his face was swollen like a pig's head. He was also trying his best to open his swollen eyes and look at the sky in shock. Chu Yang was stunned. What's going on? Following their gazes, he could not help but look up at the sky as well. However, all he saw was a clear sky with white clouds and a cold wind blowing. There was nothing unusual. What's wrong with you guys? Chu Yang asked curiously. Something that could make these 4 reveal such an expression at the same time was definitely a big matter. Chu Yang firmly believed this, but he really could not see where the big matter was. This made him depressed. Something big has happened. Gu Duxing was still looking at the sky. It was as if there was something he wanted to pursue in the eternal sky. He was so persistent in looking. Something big. Looking at Luo Kedi and the others nodding continuously, and GMO who was lying on the ground also nodded like a chicken pecking rice, Chu Yang was confused. Calamity Swordmaster has already found the 2nd fragment of the Calamity Sword. Gu Duxing said deeply. In other words, the 2nd fragment of the Calamity Sword has returned. Calamity Swordmaster. Calamity Sword? Huh. Chu Yang was so shocked that he almost bit his own tongue. He was dumbfounded. In an instant, he only felt a gush of blood rushing to his head. That's right. The 4 of them nodded together. 4 pairs of solemn eyes looked at Chu Yang together. From Chu Yang's perspective, they seemed to be deep in thought. Except for GMO, who was beaten up by Gu Duxing to the point that he could not open his eyes and could only squint his eyes, The other three all had big eyes like a bull's eyes. How did you guys know? Chu Yang stuttered. You're so stupid. Gu Duxing glared at him and said, every time Calamity Sword Master finds a fragment of the Calamity Sword, the sky of Fort Continent will change color. This is a phenomenon in the sky. Phenomenon in the sky? Chu Yang rolled his eyes and almost fainted. Motherfucker, he almost blurted out, we're all brothers, you guys have to keep this a secret for me. This is not fun. Luckily, he didn't say it out loud. You don't even know this? Gu Duxing looked at him with disdain. You're from Fort Continent. You don't even know Calamity Sword Master? Is he very famous? Minister Chu asked with a smile in his eyes. His attitude was very smug. He was just waiting to be flattered. He's more than famous. Sure enough, the four of them shouted together. Each of them looked at Chu Yang with a "you're hopeless" look. Calamity Sword Master. Calamity Sword Master. He's the idol of the entire Fort Continent. Oh my god, you don't know? Idol? Minister Chu rubbed his belly without leaving a trace. Then he stuck out his tongue and brushed it across his upper lip. He said in surprise, so powerful? Is he also your idol? Of course. The four of them shouted in unison. Their answers made Minister Chu feel like he was drinking wine. He asked dizzily, is this person very powerful? More than powerful. GMO said with a bitter face. It's because of this bastard that I was kicked out of upper three heavens for training. This bastard. If I see him, I'll definitely beat him up. I'm just afraid that I won't. Chu Yang's brows twitched. Yes, this Calamity Sword Master is a guy who wants to see the world in chaos. As long as he appears, the world will not be peaceful. Luo Kadi said angrily, this bastard is a shit stirrer. Minister Chu's face darkened. However, Calamity Sword is a divine object that sword practitioners like us dream of. Gu Duxing's words were more sincere. But before Chu Yang's mood improved a little, he added, it's a pity that it fell into the hands of a lucky bastard. It's simply a waste of a heavenly treasure. If it fell into my hands, Rui Barong nodded repeatedly, yes, yes. This kind of lucky bastard is the most infuriating. If he's lucky, then so be it. But he has to come out and show off. If he wants to show off, then so be it. But he has to cause chaos in the world. Motherfucker, who has it easy in this world? Everyone has to work hard. But this bastard with a sword can kill 5 people. King of Hell Chu's shoulders slumped. He said listlessly, I really want to chop someone. We want to too. The four of them said in unison, we're especially interested in that Calamity Sword Master. Minister Chu rolled his eyes and said as if he had just discovered the new Fort Continent, wow. GMO. Oh, my poor third brother, what happened to you? Look at you. You look like you were raped by a pack of bears. Well, it was a great way to change the topic. I wasn't raped by a bear, but I'm close. This shout was extremely depressing. Even Jimo's eyes, which were swollen into a line, miraculously widened. What's wrong? Chu Yang was startled. At this moment, the other three also noticed Chu Chen's abnormality. Gu Duxing took 3 steps back in disbelief. Luo Kadi fell on his butt and sat on the ground. He was dumbfounded. Miao Butong's body swayed a few times. He was flabbergasted. What's wrong? Chu Yang frowned. He wanted to use this as a pretext to make a fuss. He was scolded by these guys just now, but he could only endure it. You broke through again? GMO groaned. GMO groaned and twisted his buttocks. He screamed in pain and jumped up. He had been lying down and was now standing upright. He hissed in cold air and gnashed his teeth. There's no justice in this world. There's no justice in this world. Chu Chen finally understood. He raised his head proudly and said modestly and cautiously, I accidentally broke through a few levels. It's nothing. I just went from a 7th grade martial master to a 2nd grade martial great master. It's not worth mentioning, not worth mentioning. He squinted his eyes and said with a smile, facing you guys from the super clans of the upper 3 heavens, this kind of speed is even more embarrassing. There's no justice in this world. GMO and Luo Kadi cried out in grief and indignation. It's already very unreasonable to break through so quickly. After breaking through, you still want to use this to provoke us. That's even more unreasonable. Chu Yang laughed loudly. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.